What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning into Exploring Reality. Today, we got another debate review. The last debate review we've done, was with Ryan, and Alex O'Connor was involved. So I guess we're just going to pick on him some more. And
I was also there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was the same
James
group.
was there.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. That was the first time I met James. So, yeah.
That was fun. All right, well, funny. Do you guys have any... it was a long debate. Do you have any preliminary remarks you want to get into? James, you didn't watch this at all. I made it like an hour and 15, maybe an hour 20 into it before I'm like, I need this to stop. So I don't know if anybody has any...
I at least got through the whole debate. And then when the Q&A started, I was like, I have no more stomach for this. I guess, okay, no. You know what? Here's the one qualifying thing I guess I'll say before we get into this. So there's this thing called real scholarship. And sometimes real scholars debate things, but usually those aren't the ones that we want to put up in the public audiences for good reason, because scholars are usually terrible about speaking to the public. But I at some point, I'm also going, why are we just letting like people who are not remotely experts on anything at all debate these big topics? Like I don't know, but whatever. That's all I got.
That was so I didn't even know about this debate until yesterday. And I saw like a short that came out, and it was Dinesh talking about how he asked Alex, like, oh, well, do you think the universe had a beginning? And Alex was like, yeah, probably. And then Dinesh goes, well, how did the biblical authors know that? And then Alex comes back and says, well, okay, maybe they got that right, but then what about their cosmology? And then Dinesh just like starts backpedaling right away, saying, right, and after I saw that, I'm like, oh no.
Yeah.
And that was at the end of the day, my first thought was like, why is it that like hundreds of thousands of people are propping up this conversation instead of the scholars? And that's like a really big source of frustration for me. So I'm not a scholar. I'm not sitting here pretending I would have like been perfect.
No, but like I mean, look, we got someone like Tasosa who was in and out of jail, so he's got like an interesting like profile people are interested in. And then you've got someone like Alex who's got that accent, and Americans are just like, they swoon over it. And I'm like, you know what? Like if he was just from a bit further north in England, you would hate his accent. Like you would go, how are you even speaking English? And they wouldn't listen to anything he has to say. So you know, you've got like a particular profile that attracts people here to this debate with these two people. But beyond that, I don't really understand what's going on here.
Dinesh has made a lot of moves, or has gained some attention for his political stances and products.
Oh, yeah.
So he's probably getting some. That's probably drawn some people to this. I won't say a lot. Probably drawn some people to it.
I didn't even pay attention because I honestly, I've heard the name Dinesh D'Souza before, but
if I remember correctly, he made an entire movie bashing Obama back when Obama was president. I don't remember this. I don't remember the outlines of the movie, but it's something in that general vague direction of like Obama's a colonizer or something. I don't remember the specifics.
Yeah, no, like he's been in. Gosh, yeah, I am in a spicy mood today. It was a long story. I can explain some other time. But yeah, like yeah, he's been in the political limelight for a very long time. And then he got put in jail for some pretty weird reasons, to be fair to him. But yeah, he's been constantly trying to make a name for himself in religion and in politics. So yeah, he's been around for a while.
I didn't even know about the jail thing. So that's interesting. Well, let's get into it.
This saying that I did not know what this debate was about until about 15 minutes ago. So
yeah, this
is a reaction video for James. Like this is I know nothing about what went.
Yeah, just going in cold and be like, and now you need to be like, oh, make all the fake faces that everybody does for these reaction videos.
You got to do this for me at some point, James, so I can update the thumbnail.
I'm trying not to. Yeah.
All right. Where does this start again?
I don't know, because it was like 15 minutes of meaningless like garbage before they started this debate. Like,
I know. Let me know if you can't hear this.
Each other 10 minutes each to lay out something of a case. We're not going to be too strict with that, but and then hopefully
we're good there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
Most of the time we can dedicate to just having a chat. Dinesh said that I can go first, which seems a little odd given that he's, I suppose, technically on proposition. But I wanted to lay out a few different ways that I interpret the question and see where he wants to take it. Some people said that I shouldn't do this debate with this question. It's kind of an impossible question. It's the kind of question that requires more of an explanation to ask than to answer, which is a little bit strange. So I thought...
Okay, so right off the bat, I do want to say this. I agree with that. Like, I think is the Bible true is a really bad debate topic. Like, what does that even mean? And so he digs into that. So like, I just really want to highlight that as a point of agreement. You have to explain what that question even means off the top. Like, and how do you even frame that in a debate setting? I just...
Yeah, I think it's fair.
Yeah, Dinesh shouldn't have even agreed to that topic.
I don't think anybody should have agreed to that topic.
He was not coached. The fact that he accepted this, or at least he did not listen to his coaches, like...
You think he had debate coaches?
I don't know. If they did, they either gave him bad advice or they told him not to do this, and he I can't imagine anyone being a debate coach and being like, this is a good idea for a topic, but I don't have to tell them more about that. This is just like the second you said this is the debate topic, I'm like, I would hate to have to argue the affirmative for that, because all you have to do is be like, all right, let's just look at Psalms, and the trees clapped for the Lord. Like,
right,
okay,
exactly.
well, like...
Yeah.
That reminds me of one of your TikTok podcast episode that you talked about, where you're talking about like dialectical disadvantages. Like, I'll hand this to Alex. He came to this debate and he used his dialectical advantage a little bit, but he didn't badger Dinesh over the head with it. So like, I really respect Alex for that, because he could have easily just been like, not true, and just badgering him, right? But instead, like I think he did a good job of actually being charitable enough during the debate. But yeah. Anyway, let's keep going.
A book. It's a library, and like any good library, it contains an amalgamation of different genres. And so asking if the Bible is true, you might as well ask if the corpus of Shakespeare is true. It sort of betrays a misunderstanding of how people interact with the text. So I thought, will Dinesh argue that the Bible is literally true, historically true, allegorically true, morally true, theologically true, metaphorically true? And I suppose the only thing for it is to sort of try each one on for size. So maybe beginning with Genesis, in an attempt, clearly not at historicity, but rather allegory and metaphor. We can deal with one of our types of truth here. We're introduced to Adam and Eve, who were told in no uncertain terms by God not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You may begin to wonder why knowledge of good and evil is such a bad thing, but the thought is interrupted by the introduction of the serpent, who says to Eve, did God say that if you eat of the tree, then in the day that you eat of it, you shall surely die? And Eve says, yes. And the serpent says, well, that's not going to happen. God just knows that if you eat of it, you'll become like him, knowing good and evil. And he doesn't want that. That's all. You're not going to die. So Eve famously takes the fruit, eats some, gives some to Adam, and what happens? Do they die in the day thereof? Some people say in a metaphorical sense, yes. We'll get to that in a second, but at least on the surface of it, no. What does happen? God tells us himself. He says, now the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. He must not be allowed to reach out his hand and eat from the tree of life, lest he inherit eternal life. And with this, Adam and Eve are banished from the Garden of Eden. So who's telling the truth here? This story is quite mystifying to me, and I'm not the first to point this out. There's actually an apocryphal gospel discovered near Nag Hammadi in Egypt in the 1940s, dated into around the 2nd or 3rd century, called the Testimony of Truth, the gospel that didn't make it into the New Testament, which identifies the serpent, interestingly, who's never called Satan in the text, by the way, identifies the serpent with...
I knew you were going to roll your eyes at that.
Oh, man. All of the TikTok slogans. This is what the early church didn't want you to hear.
See, this is the thing, is like, I feel bad for the younger generations, because when I grew up and all these different apocryphal stuff was getting translated in English, like at least we only had like LiveJournal and MySpace. We didn't have like all these like all the social media be like, this is what they didn't want you to hear. It was like you had to at least read a newspaper to hear like that kind of garbage. But yeah, he's like, there's this thing that was written like several hundred years after, like, you know, like all the other gospels, and the church didn't want you to know.
Into the Bible.
Yeah, and I'm like, there was a million of these that were written like after, just this sort of authority that was given to these was always very low and always dubious. Like,
I don't know if Alex hasn't, and this is me way off the top of my head, but I have a video talking about this at somewhere within my videos, talking about like the combat myth and a chaos comp and stuff like that. But it's interesting. Like, I'm assuming if Alex has read the Enochic literature and like the intertestamental literature, like, why would you go to the Gospel of Truth to talk about the Adam and Eve account instead of something like intertestamental, like the life of Adam and Eve, which is a pseudepigraphic text, to try to like contextualize a little bit more or anything like that? Because I'll stop there because I'm gonna get off on a huge rant there. James, you got
as far as I can tell, the point is to shock people because here's the thing: when you're in a debate like this, you know that most of your audience has not read any of this stuff, and you know they're not going to read most of this stuff. So you have the advantage of being able to just like throw some random bit of information out there. You know, no one's going to fact check you, and you can get away with it, and you scored your cheat point, and there you go, you're done.
Yeah. James, you got anything?
No, nothing
Okay.
more than the eye roll. That was the majority of what I had.
Tell me to stop when you want me to stop.
I'm sorry, can I just pause for a second? Like, sorry, this is like a weird thing to complain about. It's a little bit distracting that, like, I think it's God's foot is like directly behind Alex. I'm sorry, that's a bit weird. And like the amount of gap between the toes
so broken?
Yeah,
it's like grabbing at something, you know, like that's a toe someone could pick up stuff with, you know,
like that. And the fact that the title of this YouTube video is in all caps yelling at me. These are two of the like first things I noticed, and that's not important to the context of what Alex is saying. We can keep going, but I just had to get that off my chest.
I'm glad you got it out of your system.
With Jesus, I don't know if I'd go quite that far, but it does seem that the sort of allegorical truth of the story leaves a lot to be desired. I'm told that maybe Adam and Eve died a sort of spiritual death, or mortality entered the world. But then we need to ask why it is that God had to proactively banish them from the Garden of Eden. This isn't a natural result of sin that mortality entered the world. They're banished. And the implication is that they could have just as easily reached out and eaten from the tree of life, but God didn't want this to happen. So he guards the gates of Eden with a cherubim, with a flaming sword. I find this quite strange, and I'd like to know what Dinesh thinks of it. Moving on quickly, I suppose, to the events of the later Old Testament, skipping over Exodus, we're introduced to another form of truth that I want to potentially engage in, and that's the concept of moral truth. That's another one that I spoke about in the beginning just there, the concept of moral truth. When we look at some of the military conquests of the Old Testament, bear in mind that the promised land pledged to Abraham is not an empty plain. Its indigenous inhabitants had to be, shall we say, displaced by a series of military campaigns ordered by God and carried out by his prophets. Thus, we have such commands as in Deuteronomy, chapter 20. When you march up to attack a city, make its people an offer of peace. Sounds promising to start with. If they accept and open their gates, all the people in it shall be subject to forced labor and shall work for you. Some peace. If they refuse to make peace and engage you in battle, which, why would they do that on these terms? Lay siege to that city. When the Lord your God delivers it into your hand, put to the sword all the men in it. As for the women, the children, and the livestock, and everything else in the city, they get to go... hold on. You may take these as plunder for yourselves, that's right. And you may use the plunder the Lord your God gives you from your enemies. Likewise, in 1 Samuel, we have the destruction of the Amalekites. There's the order, now go attack the Amalekites and totally destroy all that belongs to them. I'm told sometimes that this is actually an exercise in hyperbole. God didn't mean everyone. It continues, do not spare them. Put to death men and women, children and infants, cattle and sheep, camels and donkeys. And if you think that this is hyperbole, consider what happens when Saul does conduct the destruction of the Amalekites as ordered, and decides to leave alive the king as well as some of the best of the livestock. He leaves them alive. For this small act of mercy, God responds by saying to the prophet Samuel, I regret that I have made Saul king because he's turned away from me and has not carried out my instructions. So not even the animals can escape this genocide. So I'd like to ask Dinesh, I suppose, directly, which is it? Is this a morally corrupt series of events, or do I have to dispel with my moral intuition that genocide, including of innocent children, is a bad thing? There's plenty more to talk about in that regard. I don't want to take up too much time. This isn't, of course, to mention the advocacy and explicit instructions around slavery in the Old Testament. Hopefully we can get onto those too, if we want to go down the moral path. But I think that the most natural interpretation of the question is the concept of historicity, the literal truth of the Bible, that is. This is where I think we have to move to the New Testament, because the genre of the gospel seems to be historical biography, unlike the mythology of a book like the Psalms or Genesis or Job. And here there's a lot to talk about. We begin with the birth narratives. There are two birth narratives in the Gospels, in Matthew and Luke.
We can
both give
pause it for
different
just a
accounts.
second. This is just to reiterate the stupidity of this debate topic. The fact that I'm not saying either one of them is stupid. I'm just saying this debate topic is stupid because already what Dinesh has on the table that he has to deal with is interpretation of Genesis, morality of Old Testament conquests. And oh boy, here we're going into the New Testament, birth narrative. So he's having to jump from three just widely separate issues, and we're still just, I don't know how far into this opening topic. And this is why you need a very specific debate topic, because setting aside all types of like charitability, like if Alex approaches this, and I don't know what his psychology is when he approaches this debate, but if Alex approaches this debate as a chess player and he's just trying to win, he's just like, he is in a positionally, he's doing so much better. Like he is in an extremely strong dialectical position here because the degree of what he can attack is so wide. And as long as Dinesh can't possibly, get to all of it and answer it in a satisfactory way, then Alex is going to be like, okay, look at all these cool little pieces I collected, off the board. So I just want to reiterate, if you're watching this and you're like, why were these guys so harsh on the debate topic? This is exactly why, is because each of the three things that have been very briefly mentioned so far could be an entire debate in and of themselves.
Yeah.
And should be in a debate in and of themselves.
100%. That's, I mean, even I've said this before, even my debate with Dillahunty, I think resurrection debates are way too broad, because you have to talk about so many different things: epistemology of miracles, God's existence, the reliability of the New Testament, all sorts of stuff, and you can dig into divine hiddenness, all these things, and like you have to have so many things that you have to like agree upon to get into the weeds on a particular topic. And me saying something like the resurrection is a bad debate topic, this is just horrible. Like, and this is exactly why. So I will say this as a compliment to Alex, me being impartial here, like if I'm him, this is exactly what I would be doing. I would break up this debate topic into categorical instances that I can break up and be like, it's not true here, it's not true here, it's not true here. And that's exactly what he's doing. And I think it's a really smart move on his end.
Both have a genealogy of Jesus, for example, but the genealogies are different. I'm told this is because one records Mary's genealogy and one records Joseph's. You can do this if you like. It doesn't seem like the most natural reading of the text if you're not already.
Okay, I just wanted to stop there. I have a video on this if anybody's interesting. And this is, to me, I think it's just a really stupid, it's a really bad objection. Well, that's just not a natural reading of the text. Well, natural to who? What does natural mean in this instance, right? Presumably, he wants to say this is like a forced harmonization or something like that. But again, is it forced just in virtue of like your idiosyncratic reading of the text, or is it forced in virtue of like, this isn't what this isn't what like the biblical authors at the time would have been interested in doing, right? I just think that's a bad response to this type of harmonization, and people treat harmonization really weird for some reason when it comes to the Gospels. For some reason, like we do harmonization all the time. It's a normal thing to do in history and in everyday life, but for some reason it's bad to do it when it comes to the Gospels.
That is a weird thing, because like at various points in history, it's been very popular to try to do the harmonization process, but at the moment right now, it seems like that's not popular at all. And other than that, it's just not fashionable. I don't understand like what the arguments are, but I'm not like that deep into the New Testament studies to figure out why it's not fashionable at the moment.
There's not really a clear answer to it for me at the moment. Like, unless you want to get into psychologizing people, but I try to avoid that. So,
which is fair.
Oh, yeah, sure. I would say I think part of it is some harmonizations are really forced and really strained and like bad. So you have a spectrum of people who are like, we're going to harmonize everything, even if that means like, there's some harmonization with something like, well, Peter denied Jesus like 9 times, or like something. It's something like ridiculous like that. I don't remember if it's exactly that, but it's something along those lines of it's just like it becomes like really extra really quickly. And so there are some strained harmonizations. And so some people are like, yeah, these are garbage. Let's just go in this other direction and use like compositional devices and stuff like that. But then sometimes in doing that, they also throw in the wastebasket like actually decent harmonizations. So there's a middle ground of like, okay, some of these harmonizations are like really implausible and like,
yeah,
but yeah,
100%. All right,
predisposed to synchronize the accounts. Then we have, for example, the flight to Egypt, which is only recorded in Luke, which is difficult to reconcile with Matthew's account that they went to the temple in Jerusalem instead. But more importantly, Matthew then says that the family traveled to Nazareth, and he says, "So was fulfilled what was said through the prophets, that he shall be called a Nazarene," quoting the prophets. Now, you'll notice if you read an online Bible that where the Old Testament prophets are quoted, there's a little footnote telling you what the prophecy is. In this case, you won't find one, because prophecy simply doesn't exist. It's not there. There's no such thing. So there are 2 options here. Either Matthew made up this prophecy or got it wrong, in which case the New Testament is mistaken, or the prophecy does exist, but for some reason fell out of our scriptural tradition and now no longer exists, which makes the accuracy and at least the completeness of the Old Testament suspect. So again, I'd like to ask directly which it is.
Yeah, but all I want to say there is that's a false dilemma. There's oral prophecies and all sorts of different traditions that not like I think in what let me just put it this way. An implicit assumption in that dilemma is that all prophecy must necessarily be written and canonized. And I don't see any reason to accept that assumption.
Right.
James, it looks like you were going to say something.
So it's kind of interesting about this. So this is just kind of a side note for fun. If you read some of the early church, there, and I can't give you the specifics off the top of my head. There are some instances where they'll like quote a reference or quote like a scripture or a prophecy about Jesus, and you're like, where is that?
Yeah.
And like you can't find it. And then if I remember correctly, there were some early church writers who accused the Jews of altering the scriptures to remove prophecies of Jesus. Again, I do not remember where that specific thing is off the top of my head, but I remember I went down that rabbit hole once. I don't have anything to conclude from that. I just think that like that wouldn't terribly bother me if it ended up, if something like that ended up happening. And like we're not Muslims here. We don't have to hold the perfect preservation. If it turns out like a scripture or two here or there is like lost, like that wouldn't horribly bother me.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, I would just need to know like you were talking about, like, well, what's being referenced? Is this a reference orally? Is this referencing something non-canonical, like so on and so forth?
Yeah, I just don't see how this helps the position he wants to affirm. That's that. I think that's the best way to put this. At the end of the day, it's just like, how does this make it not true in whatever relevant like categorical sense you're trying to say it is? And I don't see it. So, all right.
Finally, I suppose I should mention the contradictions that a lot of people point to in the Gospels. Some of these, I think, are legitimate, some are not. I'll give you some examples very quickly of Gospel contradictions that I do think are real contradictions. First, the date of Jesus' crucifixion. Was it before the Passover, as John states, or was it after the Passover, as the Synoptic Gospels state? Second, Jesus is...
Do I want to get into this?
No. Just go ahead and go through it, and then I've got a comment that I thought when I listened to this. But yeah, let's go ahead.
Maybe I'll just do a series on gospel contradictions. But like,
sure.
I don't want to get into it right now. I don't think I'll say this. If I remember correctly, not a single one of the contradictions he brings up are actual. I think there's instances in the New Testament that are good candidates for contradictions, and I don't think he brings up any of them. I'll say that.
Sending out his disciples to teach. In Mark, he tells them to take nothing with them except a staff. In Matthew and Luke, he says, take nothing with them, including no staff. So do they take staff or do they not? A pedantic contradiction, but a contradiction nonetheless, and one that's led people like Barnabas, Ahern to write entire articles on this. And Augustine himself actually distinguished between a literal staff and a metaphorical staff to explain this difference. Anything, I suppose, except considering the possibility of even the most minor of gospel contradictions. Third, Jesus flipping the tables at the temple. A famous story, but did you know that in the Gospel of John, this takes place at the beginning of Jesus' ministry? In the Synoptics, it takes place near the end. So when did that occur? Mary Magdalene, after the resurrection of Jesus, runs to the disciples in John's Gospel and says, they've taken the Lord, and we do not know where they have put him. Strange thing for her to say if, as the Gospel of Matthew recounts, she's visited by an angel at the tomb who tells her exactly where Jesus is going, and then she's met by Jesus herself on the way to the disciples to bring them the news. Strange for her to then say that they've taken the Lord and we do not know where they've put him. There's more to say on this. Interpolations, things which seem not to be in our oldest manuscripts, but end up in newer manuscripts of the New Testament, such as the adulterous woman, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. Most scholars agree that this was not in our earliest manuscripts and was added in at a later date. And if we can see that the gospel stories were edited after they were written down, there's no reason to think that they couldn't be edited before they were written down as oral traditions too, as well as the entire ending of Mark 16. There's a longer version, a shorter version, because the longer version simply isn't in our earlier manuscripts. These documents don't seem to have the historical reliability.
Say it again.
That's an odd point to bring up for truth, because like with the adulterous woman, if I'm not mistaken, I think Keener in his commentary of John, he mentions that yes, this is probably not in the original, but it did probably originate from authentic Jesus tradition. So someone like Dinesh could be like, okay, it's true in the sense that it happened, but whether or not it was in the original, that doesn't really matter. So like I get why Alex brings that up, because he's kind of going this Bart Ehrman style tactic of like, like textual corruption, like he's like, what else could be wrong? Oh no, I got you thinking now. But I feel like Dinesh could just bite that bullet and be like, yeah, okay, cool, it was added later, but a lot of commentators still think this is authentic Jesus tradition. So.
That would be nice if he did that. He's not going to. This is a spoiler.
Yeah.
But what's also funny to me is like, I mean, okay, if you've got a Bible that's been like published after like the year 2000, it's gonna have a footnote that says this is not in the oldest manuscripts. So it's not like this is a bombshell that anybody's like trying to hide and be like, oh, Christians, you don't know how to deal with this. It's like all the people who've been translating like the Bible for quite a long time. They're like, yeah, this isn't the earliest ones. Here it is, just in case you're interested. Like it's just there. It's no one's trying to hide this. It's right in my English Standard Version like Bible. It's right there, just saying, yeah, not in the oldest manuscript. Oh well.
Yeah, exactly.
Either. So, in conclusion, I've probably spoken too long here. Are we talking about allegorical truth, moral truth, metaphorical, theological truth, historical truth? I suppose what I want to say to Dinesh is take your pick, and I'll probably have something to say about it.
Okay, go ahead and pause because this is okay. I don't know.
He had 15 minutes to drink his water, and he chooses right now to do it. Sorry, that's probably not what you were gonna say, but that's my thought.
No,
that's petty. I'm sorry.
It's just petty, but it's funny. So I love it because in terms of my mind, I'm like, which has bigger priority, truth or humor? Oh gosh. Okay, so Alex's basic approach here, and you're going to see this later on in the debate too. It reminds me of a particular epistemology that your average historian is just going to like die inside over. So Deborah Lipstadt. Deborah Lipstadt is a historian of the Holocaust, and she has several books she's written on Holocaust denial. And what she points out is the deniers, they have this basic epistemology where they'll point out like, if they can find any sort of contradiction between anybody's testimonies about anything, therefore the whole thing is just a wash. Like it's not true at all. And I'm like, is that kind of what Alex is up to here? Where he's like, I pointed out a contradiction. Did he take a staff or did he like not take a staff? Oh, okay. Whole thing's like, like falls apart. And I'm going, this is a bizarre approach to history because that's just not how any historian thinks. Like historians, like they assume there's going to be some contradictions at various points. What you're looking for is overlap. Did Jesus tell these disciples to go and do a bunch of stuff? Okay. Did he tell them to not take anything or tell them to take a few things with them? Who cares? He told them to go do stuff and they went and did it. Did he die? Okay, everybody agrees on that. But like, did he die like on the Friday or did he die like on a Monday? Okay, everybody agrees. So like, it's just the way historians think and what they're looking for, the kinds of approaches to evidence. Alex is just like not interested in that sort of a thing here in this opening statement, as far as I can tell. And it looks like the sort of deniers we see that like someone like Deborah Lipstadt's just going to go, what are you guys doing? What's wrong with you?
Yeah, I've never actually, I haven't watched much of Alex's debate, so I am curious to know what his responses would be like. I would love to see him have a conversation with somebody just on New Testament reliability and just see how things go, because anyway, I'm not going to get on a win there. Let's go.
No, hang on. Let me get on this for 1 second, because what will be funny to see is if you get him paired up with someone like Richard Bauckham or N.T. Wright, who have the same kind of accent as he has. The problem is, like, Richard Bauckham
only if they sip tea and
yes.
eat beans and toast at the same time.
Well, no, Alex, what you need to understand is, just it could be hilarious to watch this sort of thing. I would love something like that, because when Richard Bauckham tells an old man story, like, it actually is relevant, it's on point, it goes somewhere, and you're like, oh my gosh, tell me more. So you're right there in the village where Mary Magdalene was probably born. Keep going. That would be great to see, but we're not going to get that in a second.
All right.
So I'll also point out, just as like a final thing before we move on, like someone like Lacona will like point out his like, and this is similar to what Ryan was saying. It's like, yeah, with lots of things in history, all of the sources we have contradict. With just like, like the fire, I think it was the fire of Rome or whatever. It's like, all of our sources on that contradict. Like when it comes to the Titanic, like the eyewitness testimonies, they contradict about, did it break in half before it went down, stuff like that. And so, yeah, that process, like, because that's my philosophy, is like, I just don't care that much about if you can find little small, quibbly things. But this is, again, why it's bad to choose this debate topic. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I put up the speed here because spoiler alert, and
no spoilers.
Dinesh, if somehow you watch this, I'm sorry, but this opening statement was just a total yap fest. I don't think anything was said of like substance here. So let's
I'm gonna find something of substance. I'm gonna try.
Yeah.
Okay.
My
Okay.
challenge.
Okay. There we go.
Go. If you don't mind, I'm going to stand up. Is that okay? Please? Okay. I'm standing up because I want to kind of neutralize Alex's accent advantage. I mention this because it seems to me no accident that so many of the prominent so-called new atheists have
Wait, really quick. I do want to pause there really quick. I don't think Alex is a new atheist because he compares him to like Dawkins and Hitchens and stuff like that. And I'm like, no, sorry. Alex is not a new atheist. His arguments may not be the best against theism in Christianity, but that doesn't qualify you as a new atheist. He doesn't come with that like anti-theistic rhetoric, and a bad philosophy that comes with new atheism. So it was just
No, I think you're right.
Yeah.
I just think that I think this point is the only valid point though that Dinesh brings up in his opening
The accent.
Yeah, he goes
accent
into
point.
it.
Boom.
Because he's
We're
right.
10 seconds in, we've already found the statement of value, so we're already cruising.
Yeah, this is the only part of the opening statement where I'm like, okay, you got a good strong start here. Now what?
I think this is really important to that credibility because think of it, if Hitchens and Dawkins and Alex were three Southern boys from Louisiana, would they have quite the same impact? I'm not sure. Anyway, this is why I'm standing.
Okay, stop for a second. Sorry. So I'm in Scotland at the moment. I'm staying in my friend's haunted whiskey tasting room, and she has the most posh English accent, and she went to Alabama to try to sell some stuff there, and everyone there is like, now, honey, you sound like that Downton Abbey sort of thing. I love it. I don't know what you're saying, but I'm gonna buy everything from you. And she just went for it. She hammed it up, even like just made the accent even stronger. It works with the American audience so well. It really does. So again, this is the only valid point he makes.
The only thing that you can do to overcome the British accent is be jacked and have like a super manly voice and like show your chest hair. And then anytime your interlocutor says anything that like has some sort of like intellectual substantive point over you,
You flex your pecs.
my arms are bigger than yours. Sorry.
You just do the Terry dance where he makes his pecs down. Yeah.
All right.
I was a little puzzled about this topic and kind of how to get at it because I've never debated this topic before. I'm not.
I'm sorry. Pause
even say I'm an
it.
expert in the Bible.
I'm so sorry. You're puzzled about this and how to go about it. Then why did you agree to the debate? Okay, we'll keep going. I'm sorry.
Okay, get it out of your system.
I'm sorry. I was like, then why? Why did you agree to this?
I really want to know who is the mastermind behind the debate topic. I really want to know because like Alex specifically said, "Oh, I was told not to take this debate topic." So it was clearly not Alex.
And Dinesh is already puzzled by it.
So who did this? Who's responsible? You need to go to jail.
What if
I think believing and intelligence
is off the cuff. So the atheist didn't want this debate topic. The Christian didn't want this debate topic. What if this was like a conspiracy? I won't name a religious group, but but I think we can all think of some. What if this is a conspiracy from an unnamed religious group to make the Christians look and the atheists look ridiculous by having a bad debate?
and Christian. And so I have done a bunch of debates over the existence of God, over can God's omnipotence and benevolence be reconciled with evil in the world. Those topics appear to be philosophical topics. But when you're dealing with the Bible, you have a different kind of a work altogether. And I say this because in discussing if something is true or false, you have to ask, what is it that the book is doing? Like, what's its purpose? What is it there for? Let's take an example of what I mean. Let's say if we were debating, is Shakespeare's Julius Caesar true or false? Now, Julius Caesar is a historical account. This is not one of Shakespeare's works of fiction. It's a historical drama. But because Shakespeare's interest is in drama, he emphasizes dramatic events and dramatic confrontation. He does not actually worry about trivial details, anachronisms. If an event occurs over here, Shakespeare does not hesitate to pull it in over here because of the dramatic impact is more powerful this way. And so imagine if someone were to come along and say, well, this is untrue because
When one of the conspirators shows up to commit the crime, he is, according to Shakespeare, wearing a handkerchief. Well, handkerchiefs didn't really exist in the time of Julius Caesar. This is obviously something Shakespeare got right out of Shakespearean England, stuck it right in there, didn't care about doing that because his purpose is something else, to explore the nature of tyranny, for example. And so to bring the lens of saying this is anachronistic, well, you may or may not be right, but you're like missing the point of the whole book. And you're also missing the point of the author, and you're missing the point of the reader. Meaning the author's intention is not to worry about whether or not people in ancient Rome used handkerchiefs. The point of the author is to dramatize something about the essence of tyranny and conspiracy, and maybe the conflict between tyranny and freedom. And readers of the work, understanding that, have always taken it in that spirit. So as I listen to Alex, I think to myself, let's think about the Bible, what kind of a book it is. Well, first of all, it is a book that exists sort of within a tradition and within a church. I mean, there was no Bible for 300 years.
For just a second.
Right? The early Christians got...
Because I'm going to calmly say, and then we can continue, I'm going to calmly say, I constantly am telling people the Bible is not a book. And so when I hear Dinesh say the Bible is a book, I am slightly perturbed by that. We can continue.
Man, I'm just, you're gonna be slightly perturbed. I'm probably gonna put this up on 2x speed because he takes like twice the length.
Honestly, when he started talking, I was like, oh man, this is how slow he's talking on 2x speed.
Yeah, I'm gonna put it on 2x because dude.
Oh, it's not on 2x? Okay,
no,
yeah, dude, kick that up. Let's go.
This
yeah,
is,
okay.
this
I
is,
thought it already was.
This is a yap fest. But for the sake of the audience who hasn't seen the debate yet, I'm gonna play it on 2x speed. If it's too fast, just go watch the whole debate. It's just
got together in the 4th century. They put the Bible together. Now, there's already a flourishing church. In fact, right about that time, the Roman emperor will convert to Christianity. Christianity will become the state religion of Rome. And the Bible will become, this assembled Bible will become the handbook of this church.
Gotta stay hydrated.
And what?
Gotta stay hydrated. Don't laugh.
So it is to this day. Now, that's one point. The second point is that the Bible is a very strange book to be asking this kind of a question about, because the Bible nowhere admits the legitimacy of this kind of inquiry, worth noting. The Bible is a book of declaration, I would say of revelation. It never tries to prove anything. It could, but with very rare exceptions, and even those exceptions are generally kind of feeble, it is a book of sort of bold proclamation. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Boom. It's declared as something true. Now, I want to reflect on that for a moment. Before I do, let me say...
Okay, can we pause? I know I'm being a bit pedantic, but like, if I'm Alex, I'm like, dude, pick a position, because you were just telling me I got to come at this like it's Shakespeare and I have to look at the broad like philosophical ideas it's trying to convey or like things like that. And then you're telling me, and you say, okay, I can't approach it like that. I have to approach it in this kind of more general, vague like way. And now you're saying it doesn't make anything, it doesn't try to prove anything. Setting aside the comments in the beginning of like Luke or at the end of John, where he's like, I'm writing this so that you may know all that had happened. You're setting those things aside, and now he's got like, now it's declarative again, and it's declaring this thing, which he said is declaring this is true. I'm just like, which one? And I don't know if
it gets worse, James.
Okay, that's fine. We can keep going.
It's
if I interrupt too much, let me know. Just like,
no, you're fine. Have you taken? Do you take blood pressure medication, James? Because now would be a good thing to start.
I don't.
And God created the heavens and the earth. Obviously, somebody's writing this, but who? No one was there except God. And yet, the sentence does not say in the beginning, I created the heavens and the earth. There's apparently an observer, and the observer is recording, and God is in fact in the narrative. God is in fact the subject of it. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So as I think about the statement, I think that first of all, it is an astounding claim, completely counterintuitive. And by counterintuitive, I mean, well, I get most of my intuitions from Aristotle. Aristotle, using, you could call it philosophical common sense, says the universe has always been around. It's always been here. You don't need an explanation for how it got started because it never got started. It's always existed. And the Greeks also believed, as you probably know, out of nothing can come nothing. So therefore, if you first had nothing, you got a universe. The Bible goes against this Greek tradition and states categorically, as a matter of fact, that first there was nothing, and then there was a universe because God made it. So there's some factual assertions.
Can you pause for a second?
The assertion that the universe had a beginning.
Like when I was listening to this, okay, so first off, I had the same reaction that James had a minute ago. I was like, where are you going? Like, you're just like throwing everything on the wall and just going like, let's just have a bunch of different like mishmash of positions. Like there's no proclamation, but like it's gonna like proclaim something. It's not trying to prove anything, except for those parts over there that tried to. And then now he's like, well, yeah, like the Bible is going. So in one sense, it's true. The Bible is saying there's like, it seems to be saying that there's no universe and then there's a universe, but it's not like there's nothing whatsoever and then all of a sudden there's stuff. You've got God existing alone and then stuff. So this whole principle of nothing from nothing, nothing comes, like that's still true because you're not going to get something from absolutely nothing, but you've got God in the doctrine of creation ex nihilo is not like there's nothing whatsoever and all of a sudden things just kind of popped into existence willy nilly. It's like no, there's like this whole like thing called God there. I don't know. Details.
It's bad. They'll talk about Genesis later on, and it's
since we're already paused. I was sitting here thinking, like he was describing Genesis, and I was like, just some of like a debate critique. I don't think they need to. I don't think the audience needs you to describe them like the basic concept of what a story is. Like the idea of like, oh, there's this character and we're describing things the character does. Like the audience has that. Like you don't need that. And also that is something that is common among all or almost all creation myths. Like there's a lot of creation myths of a guy writing about and this god did this or this titan did this. Like that's not a unique aspect. So we can keep going.
I'll say this throughout the debate. I think it's clear that I think Alex has a surface level understanding of ancient Near Eastern studies, and Dinesh doesn't have one at all. Based off of this so far.
If he does, he did not show it at all.
Yeah, exactly.
That the universe, in a sense, came out of nothing, and of course, the assertion that the universe was created by God. So we can, if we want to go down this road, I'm not going to do it right now, explore whether this astounding claim that was made by the ancient Jewish writers with no evidence at all, no empirical investigation, no scientific experiment, no attempt to measure the redshift of galaxies. Nevertheless, the ancient Hebrew writer says, we know this to be true because God told us. And now here we are, more than 2,000 years later, really more like 3,000 years later, and we're in a position to ask, is this claim true? So I'll defer that. I'm happy to discuss that, and probably will. But this is one way to think about whether what the Bible says is true. It's making these categorical assertions. And most of these assertions, I would argue, are in the domain of revelation. The Bible is, in fact, a revelation. A revelation. Right here we have a problem, because how does one approach a revelation philosophically? Alex, you just tell me when I'm out of time. Okay, I'm just going to go until you stop me. 3 minutes, I think. I'm okay? 3 minutes. I got 3 minutes. Oh, wow. It's just getting started. All right, I'll save some myself. But let me just say this.
Wait, what's our timestamp?
This is why
32
you
minutes.
Plan your opening statement.
What'd you say?
This is why you plan your opening statement.
Yeah, 32 minutes. And he said that he has 3 minutes left. I just want to see how long it runs.
What is the point of revelation at all? You know, we have a guy here who says he's a cosmic skeptic. Many people I think are skeptics.
Even Alex is amused by this.
Cosmic skeptic.
I like the scare quotes.
Oh man, dude. Look at Alex's face. Look, I'm going into this as a Christian wanting Dinesh to like do well.
Same.
But like, dang, dude, dang.
Faith is the substance of things hoped for.
Oh man, okay. Oh, I wish I could zoom in. So Alex's face, dude. It's just like.
And so you might ask, well, what the heck do we need revelations? We have a reason. Well, turns out that here we are, flung into the world. And if we reflect upon this fact and reflect upon our place in the world, several important questions pop out that are the inevitable result of reason, but which reason is utterly incapable of answering. Not that reason has an answer to date. Reason cannot answer. What are these questions? 1, why is there a world? 2, what is our purpose in it? Why are we here? 3, what happens after we die? 4, is our passionate concern with justice, with morality, with goodness, that is constantly betrayed in the actual life of the world, ever cosmically vindicated after the world or beyond the world? So I could go on, but I'm giving you 4 straightforward questions that no intelligent person, I think, can avoid having to raise, and yet to which there is no available or even conceivable answer. It's not as if there's no answer, but we'll get an answer tomorrow. Because let me put it this way. Let's take the question about life after death. And I'll close on this and open the door to further inquiry. Let's talk about life after death. Is there life after death, yes or no? Shakespeare says that death is the undiscovered country. No traveler who has gone there has ever come back. I think we probably have to agree with this. We might get some tiny hints from like near-death experiences, but by and large, we don't know. And not only do we not know, we have no way of knowing. The key point here is that probability, the absence of evidence is the evidence of absence. This is all gobbledygook. Because all of this is only based on prior experience. If you show me a guy and tell me he has 3 eyes, I won't.
I'm sorry, but my inner Bayesian is
I
screaming
knew
right
you.
now.
Probability.
How
is
dare you,
probably good.
Dinesh? Am I saying his name right?
I was just about to
It's
say, I like
Dinesh.
that every time we say his name, it's different. It's been Dinesh, it's been Dinesh, it's been Denise at one point. That one got me. I didn't say anything, but I liked it. We were constantly changing his name. I do want to point out that he just said one of the questions that any intelligent person is going to ask is, how did the world get here? But then like 5 minutes ago or something like that, he was like, it's so amazing. The Bible said that the world began. How did they know that? And again, I'm saying this as a Christian, right? So like, if you like, this guy's being really critical, like that's because it's just like, he's contradicting himself. He's telling me it's so surprising the Bible said the universe began to exist. And then like 5 or 10 minutes later, he's like, everybody asked themselves, how did the world get here?
Well, wait until I think he brings up Kant pretty soon.
I believe you. Because I've seen thousands of people, maybe hundreds of thousands of people, and I've got a lot of experience, and based upon that, the probability that a guy can show up with 3 eyes may seem to me to be pretty low. But the question of life after death, if I think of an analogy for it, it's something more like the possibility of aliens. It's not even an exact analogy, but it's a similar analogy because if I say to Alex, you believe in aliens, there's no probabilistic way to say, yes, we have nothing in our experience to go this way or that way. And here's my point. It is exactly when reason not only breaks down, but reason like can't even go there, that revelation steps in and delivers an answer. And here we are like debating, is that answer true? And the question I want us to think about, at least to get started tonight, with what tools are you going to deliver a true or false verdict on subjects that are outside the domain of reason itself? I mean, Immanuel Kant says on the first page of the Critique of Pure Reason, before we discuss the great reach, whether we discuss whether this is reasonable or that's not reasonable, and whether this is empirical, because we first got to set the boundaries of reason. What is it that reason can and cannot know? Why? Because what Kant is basically getting at is that once you go beyond the reach of reason, faith is not unreasonable at all. Why? Because you have nothing else. So what I want to emphasize here, and I'm happy to discuss all the specifics we've covered today, or Alex has covered today, but essentially, the Bible is something that is taught in church. It's a tool for ministry, for exhortation, to get people to live better lives, to help them deal with their life in the world. I have never heard a single pastor, for example, and I'm quite sure this doesn't happen in Jewish synagogues as well, going, you know what, let's go out and find the Amalekites of our day and kill them right now. Nobody says that. No one even thinks that. No one reads the passage that way. Nobody reads the passage.
Go ahead, Ryan, get it out.
So when I heard this earlier, I just immediately thought of Ian Paisley, which is so in Ireland back like not that far along. There was a lot of bloodshed. It was called the Troubles. This is late 20th century, and William Abraham, before he passed away, he told me like one of the first books he ever wrote was on Ian Paisley's sermons, and a big part of what Ian Paisley did was find his political enemies and use the Gospels. And in his sermons, he figured out this way to like kind of weave in together all this very political rhetoric of, okay, here's all the people that are against us. And that was used to justify all sorts of bloodshed. So, I mean, just even within Dinesh's own lifetime, there would be a bunch of examples of people who did go, let's try to figure out who are the Amalekites of our own day.
Yeah, you can point to so many instances throughout human history where the Bible's used to justify things like this.
Yeah,
so I thought the same thing. But
Of the fall in the way that Alex described it. And so we have a little bit of a problem. We got a book. It's a book that exists within a community for a purpose that the community is extremely clear about. This book is used every...
By the way, 32-minute mark. We were told 3 minutes.
Yeah.
He's at 38.
Yeah. I wanted to say, sorry about coughing on Mike. I thought I was muted. That's a sorry to everyone in the audience as well as to Ryan. I wanted to say, he's like, oh, he said, what are the tools? Because we just can't do this with reason. He's like, what are the tools? And I'm sitting here thinking, you've got a minute left in your opening statement. You better tell me what the tools are very quickly. Like, I don't know why we can keep going. We got it.
Every single Sunday, millions of times and all around the world. It's used in Protestant and Catholic churches. Obviously, there are interpretive communities that differ on how things can be read and understood. There's also the whole separate question of the relationship of the Old Testament to the New. There's an old saying that goes that the New Testament is in the Old concealed. The Old Testament is in the New revealed. So the Old Testament and the New exist in a kind of odd relationship to each other. In fact, so odd that one party, the Jews, repudiates the relationship altogether. And from the Christian point of view, the Old Testament is incorporated but superseded by the New. And there are different ways of looking at that relationship, which we can get into. Let me just close by saying this.
For a rather long 3 minutes.
Oh, it's a rather long 3 minutes.
It's maybe meant you finish in the way Jesus promised.
No, let me pause right here because
and ambiguous soon. But I'd love to question you on some things you've already said.
all right,
Never
we'll put the ball in your court. So I think what's going to happen now is we're going
All right, let's go back to 1.5. So
Yeah, go ahead.
I will rank the opening statements here based off the debate topic. Alex's, I will give a solid 7 out of 10.
Dinesh.
Wait, can you Dinesh's 2 out of 10. No, 1 out of 10. Like he didn't
Dinesh's-
connect anything. He didn't build a case for why we should think anything in the Bible is true or anything like that. So I'm just like, I don't know.
Dinesh's opening statement feels like a Protestant pastor's stream of consciousness. Like when he said like the New Testament revealed is the Old Testament. So like whatever the slogan he said, I was like, it just feels like he took a bunch of slogans and things like that and he just put them in a ball and he's just like catch. Like at no point. So here's the thing. I think Alex did better as far as opening statements does. But I think I would say Alex, I would want to give like maybe a 5 or a 6 because even Alex didn't come out swinging with like a hard argument. He kind of just like, hey, like here's a bunch of different issues. I don't know, maybe I'll give him 5. Maybe I'll give him like a 6 or 7 because he did say, okay, here's a bunch of different ways we could, investigate this and you pick. So like he kind of was like, you pick which thing you want to argue about. And then, but in each one of those things, he did kind of at least tease some potential ideas of an argument. So I'll bump up that rating. So yeah, I'd say maybe like a 6 or a 7 for Alex. But then Dinesh just, at no point in this was there even an argument or anything hinting at an argument about why one might think the Bible is true in any sense of the word, even if it's in just like a vague, like Shakespearean, whatever his Shakespearean like comparison was, like even in that sense, he just presents a bunch of reasons that we can't. He just presents a bunch of ideas and he's like, oh, I don't know. Like he just kind of like shrugs and he's like, how are we to investigate this? Can't use probability. And then he's just,
Yeah, how dare you, Dinesh? We're gonna have to have a conversation about probability because I mean this in the nicest way possible. If there's any like older boomers or Gen Xers listening to this, I felt like I was listening to like an old man telling me tales about his life and trying to teach through narrative. And it was one of those lectures that I didn't want to listen to. Oh.
I think that's fair because okay, so if you would have just played me like Alex's opening statement, I think I would have figured out without me even knowing what the debate topic is. So say that's the setup. No one tells me what the debate topic is, and then you play Alex's opening statement. I think I could guess what the debate topic is. If you played me just Dinesh's opening statement and did not tell me what the debate topic is, I would have no idea what on earth we're supposed to be talking about. Like I would be completely lost. Like it's just so off topic that I'm like, okay. And then also some of the stuff that he was like, reason can't figure this out. I'm like, I'm kind of like writing a book right now on all the different arguments, like from pure reason on like where did the world come from and like why is it this way and all that. I don't know. I'm just trying to like trace down the history of all these different opinions on this question.
Yeah, well, even in his opening statement, he even said he's had debates on the existence of God and the problem of evil and stuff like that. So I'm just kind of like, I wonder what he thinks reason is, but whatever. Well, let's.
I don't know because he wrote a book. He did write a book on like arguing for the existence of God. It was quite a long time ago. It was probably 15 years ago now at this point. But I never really read it. But I remember it was really big at the time, and it just looked like just kind of some watered down, like here's a Kalam cosmological argument. Here's a this or that from the little bits that I skimmed through. So he's aware of this stuff.
All right. Let's move on.
I'm ready for the most thoughtful.
We're going to go into
Q&A I've
discussion.
ever heard
Hope so.
in my entire
Okay,
life.
and you're going to ask me some questions. We'll discuss, and I'll ask you some.
Sure, and I'm happy to essentially take the things that I said in my opening statement and slot them in and apply them to the things that you just said right there. So you began by saying that the Bible is a strange book to ask these questions of because of its purpose. I assume you'd agree with me that the Bible is a collection of books rather than a singular text, with different authors, different intentions, and most importantly, different genres. So the first question I suppose I'd like to ask you is, do you agree, for example, that at least some biblical texts are attempts at historical biography, such as in the Gospels?
Of course, I would agree with that. But let me just qualify it this way.
Sure.
When we think of the Bible as revealed, the question now becomes, what do we mean? Did God write the book? Did God inspire the book and human beings wrote it? Did God show human beings events that they then described in their own words? Okay, so the reason these things are important is it seems to me, to answer the question I raised earlier about in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, the way I understand it is there's a perfect revelation shown to a gospel, to a Bible, to a Jewish scribe who sees it, so to speak, but writes it in his own words. When I look at the book of Revelation, same thing.
And does it get anything wrong? Do the scribes get anything wrong?
It's quite possible that they, when you say get anything wrong, they are writing it in human terms. I mean, I
mean the specifically mundane human things. I'm not talking about when the author of Genesis says that God created the heavens and the earth, or talks about the spirit moving across the face of the water. This is clearly mythological. This is clearly an attempt at mythological writing. That's fine. It would be silly to ask if that's true or not. But when somebody...
I don't think it is mythological writing at all. I think that it is simply, put it this way.
I'm mad about that.
Well, I would. So listen, if you just double down on like a really fundamentalist, like younger creationist stance, I wouldn't be that mad about it. What I'm irritated at is that he has been saying that, like, hey, this isn't like a strict, like, he has been going in that direction. And then when Alex is like, okay, so you agree with this, then he shoots it down. You just have to pick your tactic, and you got to commit.
I don't think he has a position on Genesis. I think that's the issue here, right? Like, I think the issue is he hears the word mythological and automatically is like has this weird fundamentalist like resistance to it, and then goes, "Well, I can't say that because clearly that just means it's false, and God didn't actually create the heavens and the earth and all this other stuff." When that's clearly not true, and Alex doesn't think that either. Like, Alex is extending an olive branch here. And he just threw it. I'm just, oh gosh.
If we were in the year 4000 BC, if we were John the Divine, and let's just say that God showed us in a vision the actual end of the world, right? Apocalypse. We would then write down the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, death and famine and destruction. We're not engaging in...
Oh no, what's going on?
The 4 horsemen.
Did God show human beings events that they then described in their own words? Okay, so the reason these things are important is it seems to me, to answer the question I raised earlier about in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth.
I'm not talking about when the author of Genesis says that God created the heavens.
If we were in the year 4000 BC, if we were John the Divine, and let's just say that God showed us in a vision the actual end of the world, right? Apocalypse. We would then write down the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, death and famine and destruction. We're not engaging in myth making at all. I'm actually writing what I see.
Do you think there'll be a 7-headed demon?
Of course not. I'm saying that to me, what I'm seeing is so. Let's just say, for example, it is a thermonuclear explosion of a kind that the ancient Bible writer doesn't even know what it is, right? And the consequence of it is death and destruction and famine. He's going to write it down the way he sees it.
But
right?
Where's he going to get the 7-headed dragon and the prostitute from?
This is
like a human attempt to describe a nuclear reaction?
Yes, because when words and...
Okay, hold on. Just give me a second.
We've lost James.
Did he just suggest? I don't think I heard that right. He didn't suggest that the 7-headed dragon thing was a nuclear reactor or something like that. Surely I misheard that.
I think the charitable interpretation was like, imagine if it were a nuclear reaction.
You guys see the woman?
Okay,
I mean,
so
if
I'll
you
say
squint-
this. So when I was in undergrad, one of my friends and he was like double majoring, and I think he was English and philosophy or something like that. I remember him telling me that one of his professors was like she would say things like, "Oh, like the mushroom cloud is the ultimate phallic symbol," and so I mean, maybe if you're thinking along those lines, you can find the prostitute and the dragon and things like that in that type of photo. I am not thinking along those lines.
I love this example that you gave because it's such a ridiculous stereotype that fits reality so well of like English literature professors where they're just looking for like these yonic and phallic symbols everywhere, and you're like, sometimes a mushroom cloud is just a mushroom cloud, like, you know, like sometimes like a tent flap is just a tent flap. Like, why is your mind in the gutter all the time? Like, my mind's in the gutter a lot, but my goodness, like, what's wrong with you? You know, like so yeah,
I am just doing something very quickly because I feel like it. So
I swear, dude, I don't know why, but I feel like you're about to put up a picture of a mushroom cloud, and there's gonna be like an MS Paint stick figure that looks like a prostitute, like drawn in it. I don't know if I'm just like, that's my
if you could just
fear
throw
right now.
in,
Yeah,
just throw in some kind of dragon in there.
put
If it would
like
be
the
strong bad, I'd be happy.
dragon
There you
tail.
go.
Put one of the dragons. Oh my god. Oh, geez. That is the most tame prostitute. That is. You couldn't find anything more stereotypical. That is actually tasteful. I'm glad that you didn't go to stereotypical.
I literally just typed in woman. I doubt Canva is gonna
give you prostitute or something. Huh?
Yeah, no, nothing. Sorry. And I didn't want to put that into my search engine, so
Yeah, that's fair.
Things to explain.
Okay, so let me just, if I can even attempt to be charitable towards Dinesh. So, okay, because I think he's trying to say is like, imagine if like whatever vision John would have seen on the island of Patmos, if it were a nuclear holocaust, how do you explain that if you're, you know, a first century like person? You're going to use some very over the top kind of like description. I still don't exactly know how you're going to get a prostitute and a seven-headed dragon out of that, but that's also because I think the Revelation's up to other things besides just whatever.
I think we're all in agreement here that Revelation shouldn't be read.
I think there's
like a dispensationalist reads.
I think there's an important G.K. Chesterton quote that is relevant to this moment, which is he says something along the lines of, St. John and all of his revelations never saw anything as wild as one of his own commentators. And it may be that Dinesh D'Souza has just perfected and epitomized that quote.
Okay, let's keep going. This is that I lost my marbles on that. It's like,
I think I kept it together pretty well. So
no, oh yeah, it's because I purposefully watched through this so that way I can tame my reactions a little bit more. Matt from Memes for Jesus got like an hour's worth of text for me with lots of expletives.
Images fail. Metaphor is the actual conduit to truth.
Now, I'd understand if that were the case, if you said that perhaps after a nuclear blast, somebody described it as, you know, the gods of fire descending upon man with their flaming swords or something like that. But like a prostitute and a seven-headed dragon?
Well, first of all, I'm not saying it is a nuclear explosion. The problem is we're given this admittedly phantasmagorical future account, right? Sure. It is so wrenching and powerful that many people, for example, have tried to render it by art. And it's not easy to do it, right? It's not easy to do it because we have to stop and realize, first of all, that we're dealing not only with the limitations of perception, but the limitations of language. Let me give you a simple example. I come to America from India. I have never eaten a mushroom, okay? I ask you, Alex, what does a mushroom taste like?
Sure.
I would submit that you would be completely unable to render to me in words, however lengthy and ornate, what a mushroom actually tastes
That
like.
may be true, but I was asking, for example, about Jesus' presentation at the Temple of Jerusalem after his birth. This is not like trying to describe a mushroom or the end of the world.
No.
This
Okay,
is-
so now let's talk about that.
Hold on a second. This is a historical event that's being recorded by one New Testament writer at the same time as another New Testament writer.
I feel like
traveled to Egypt.
I feel like Alex maybe at this point in the debate should have just been like, okay, what do you think the word truth means? Like, let's all get on the same page there. When if we're assessing a proposition, what does it mean to say that it's true? Or something along those lines. Because Dinesh wants to play this game where he just like exists in ironically, I almost, maybe not fully, but almost like a postmodern like truth zone where everything is just vague, and when you're not gonna force these like hard lines on me, and he just wants to like be in that zone and be vague enough so that Alex can't pin him down on anything. But yeah, so I feel like
Alex gets fed up with it. You'll see it.
Good. I'm okay. I don't like sympathizing with Alex, but I'm there. So let's do it.
I know.
Or allegory, as I would say, of Genesis. Whether you think that is or not, I would say that in the case of the Gospels, we can agree that in at least some instances, this is a clear attempt at mundane history. This is not an attempt at writing some kind of metaphor to explain a truth that's otherwise unknowable to the human mind. It's a very straightforward attempt to record what actually happened, and they contradict each other.
They contradict each other because they're written by 4 different people.
Sure.
So let me ask you this. If God were writing it, I'm quite sure he would have written it once. He would need 4.
Sure.
Okay?
So some of them are wrong then.
No. Okay, so when you say they're wrong, let's consider Luke's gospel for a minute.
Yeah.
Luke is a medical doctor. Luke is not present at the events being described.
Mm-hmm.
Luke is virtually in the position of Thucydides writing the Peloponnesian War. Now, Thucydides did fight in the war, but in most of the events described by Thucydides in the Peloponnesian War, he wasn't there.
Making them very unreliable, right?
No, on the contrary. It is, in fact, the most reliable account of the Peloponnesian War that
Let's not say
historians
that it
have.
is. Let's not say that it is reliable, though.
No, it is. What I'm trying to say is that when you're talking about historicity, and you're talking about historicity now in the ancient world, you have to recognize that these people are not approaching it as modern historians. Luke is going around interviewing people.
So let me ask this very, very straightforwardly then.
Okay.
Luke says that after the birth of Jesus, the family fled to Egypt. Matthew says that they went to the Jerusalem temple. Are they both correct, or is one of them wrong?
Who the heck cares? I mean,
Well,
look,
I do. And so
well, you do, but let me say why what you care about is not only trivial, but indicates a kind of unwillingness to try to get what the text is trying to.
I'll tell you why I don't think
It's
it's trivial.
the debate topic. Sorry, go ahead. It's literally, it's not, like, trivial or not, you signed up to debate this.
That was one of the moments where I sent Matt a nasty voice message. and I was just like, what? Again, I don't want to sound like cocky or arrogant or anything like that here, but it's like, how the heck does a guy like this get an opportunity to have such a high profile debate like this? And then there's other people that are like I'm going to remove myself from the conversation here, and now I'm going to say there are scholars I would love to see have a conversation with Alex not on this debate topic, because it's a stupid debate topic, but like, let's talk about New Testament historicity. Like, I think the reason I'm mad about this is because Dinesh had a very good opportunity laid in his hands, and I feel like he didn't take the time and didn't do the hard work of preparing for it. And then when he got here, he just throws it away even more by saying, "Who cares?" Mm-hmm. It's like, there's tons of reasons to, and I'm getting off. Go ahead if you have something to say. Otherwise, we can keep going. I don't want to keep ranting.
I have to cut myself off when I make those remarks. Yeah.
Reason why Luke may have invented the flight to Egypt. Well, he tells us. Luke says, when he records the flight to Egypt, and then they return from Egypt, he says, this is so that we can fulfill the prophecy from Hosea chapter 11, out of Egypt I shall call my son. Now, in Hosea, God is talking here about the nation of Israel. At least in this case, unlike the Matthew prophecy, the prophecy actually exists and we can interrogate it. It seems to me like what Luke is doing here is attempting to display Jesus as a fulfillment of the Old Testament prophecy. And in fact, he tells us that that's what he's doing. Therefore, if it is the case that Jesus didn't go to Egypt and didn't come out of Egypt on his return, then this would undermine Luke's attempts to identify Jesus as the Jewish Messiah, fulfillment of the Old Testament prophecy. That's why I think it is relevant.
Well, look,
and not trivial.
Right, but I think that
would you agree with that? I mean, do you think it's a completely trivial point? If it's so trivial,
no, I think that the point
as
you stated it before is trivial. The point you're now raising is not trivial, but the point you're now raising is one in which you have 3 centuries of Jewish Christian disputation about whether Jesus is the Messiah. Okay, and by and large, the disputation breaks down in this way: the Jews are the biblical literalists, and the Christians are the sort of metaphorical readers. And I say this because let's take a very famous passage of
All I'm gonna say is this guy is clearly out of touch with the scholarship.
I heard him say that, and I was like, "What? Like the Jews are the literalists?" That's no.
Yeah. And by the way, yes, Tim and Lydia McGrew have good responses on the birth narratives. I have videos on it. Eric Manning has videos on it. I'm not gonna get in here. If we were gonna stop to answer every single objection Alex brings up, we're gonna be here for way too long. So if you're watching this in the comments, if you have something in particular you want like a take on or a response to, let me know. I'll make the video.
I'm just here to get angry.
I'm just very
Say what?
I'm just here to get angry, and so far things are going great.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm
Drew,
kidding.
Jewish midrash gets really wild with interpretations. They aren't literalist. Exactly. It's
topic where Jesus is talking about the destruction of the temple. And the Jews go, you said the temple would be destroyed. Now, interestingly, Jesus did say the temple would be destroyed, and the temple was in fact destroyed in 70 AD. In fact, 40 years after Jesus said that, the temple was in fact physically razed to the ground, and the Jews dispersed in a huge diaspora. But my point is, Jesus doesn't reply that. Jesus doesn't say, hey, listen, wait 40 years. Jesus says, no, you're misreading me completely. When I said the temple, I was actually speaking of the temple of my body.
He doesn't tell them that.
But this is stated.
We're told that that's what he means.
We're told that's what he means. So what I'm getting at is here you have a case where you have an event. You have a Jewish literalist reading and a Christian metaphorical reading. Yeah. Another example, and
So would you say then the flight to Egypt is a metaphor? Is that what you're trying to say? In other words, I'm trying to understand what it is that you're doing here to actually answer the question that I'm asking you, which is about, because here's
excellent question, Alex.
Good question. Yes, because I was going to say, like, how is the Egypt flight a metaphor for? Yeah,
It's not. He's just not giving an answer.
Mm-hmm.
And look, if he knowing how to answer every single, I can't do it. If you were to ask me off the top of my head how to answer any particular contradiction, I'm gonna be like, hey, let me get to my notes, right? Not just give a bunch of, in the words of Dinesh, gobbledygook.
Yeah.
Luke, the author of Luke, invents the flight to Egypt in order to identify Jesus as the Jewish Messiah, meaning that when we read Luke, we should note that where it appears that he's making historical claims, we should note his willingness to twist history in order to fulfill a theological
you don't know if
claim.
he's doing that. You're assuming that. This is your theory.
No. What I'm saying is that that's one thesis to explain the contradiction between Luke and Matthew. If you want to say that it's trivial, then fine, but we still have to explain how it comes about. And what I'm saying is one idea of how this comes about leads to us undermining our trustworthiness of Luke. What I'm asking you for is your explanation that would not lead to us having to undermine the trustworthiness of Luke.
I don't have the ability to referee that passage. I'm not aware of this contradiction. I'll have to go back and look and see.
That's fine.
Go and look it up. But what I am doing is I'm questioning your methodology and your kind of what would I call it? You got the Jews and the Christians arguing about events, and they're very complex events, and they're very powerfully meaningful events. Like let's take for example, Abraham and Isaac are going up the mountain, and Isaac says to Abraham something to the effect of, "Where is the lamb for the sacrifice?" And Abraham says to him, "God will provide. God will provide." Now, in a Jewish reading, this whole thing has got to be understood in terms of, here's Abraham, he's willing to sacrifice his son, God says stop, it's a tale of obedience. In the Christian reading, it's not that. It's not only.
I just want to stop there. That's not true. Like, again, read through Jewish literature, and you'll very quickly see that this is a very debated passage. Like, what's that? There's a name of the book. I think it's like The Binding of Isaac or something.
Mm-hmm.
Is that? Do you know what I'm talking about, Ryan?
There's a million books like this, because that's the thing is this particular passage has been debated to death throughout all of history. I mean, it's a very controversial passage, and there's so many different opinions on how to interpret it.
Right.
So it's not like there's the Jewish and the Christian interpretation.
I'm going to see if I can't find the.
The Binding of Isaac is a pretty common title for like papers or books on this topic, though.
I know that's why I'm like, that's not helpful.
Yeah, that's not going to be helpful in the slightest. It's like a commentary on the Gospel of John. You're like, oh, what's going to come up on that? Everything. A million books. Yeah.
James, say something while I'm trying to find this.
So did you know that a lot of some Jewish commentators thought that the binding of Isaac, that came about because there was a type of proving of Abraham's loyalty based on an accusation that Satan made?
Yeah, I sent you that.
Yeah, and if you're into the idea of accusations from Satan and God disproving them, you might want to check out this book, The Devil's Disbarment.
That was great.
Was that
Anybody
a
that's-
smooth
no.
plug?
James is a friend of mine. He wrote a book called The Devil's Disbarment, and it's very good. We did a stream on it. I highly recommend reading it. Eric's here. How's it going, Eric? If you're not subbed to Eric, you probably are. If you are subbed to me, I agree, Eric. The book I was just going to bring up is this book is really helpful. If it'll, here we go. Abraham's Silence: The Binding of Isaac, The Suffering of Job, and How to Talk Back to God. It was really cool, and it goes through. One of the chapters is the unbinding of the Akedah and the straitjacket. And this, long story short, is it goes through. It's got 3 chapters in it, literally just going through different Jewish interpretations, and it's very long. So again, this idea that like Jewish literalist interpretations, I just like, is he just like pulling stuff out of his butt, or what's going on here? That's anyway.
I don't know what his position is. I mean, I really throughout the whole debate, I really cannot figure out exactly what his position is, and because later on, what you'll see is he'll make some kind of clear stand on something. Alex pushes him a bit, and then he immediately starts backpedaling. So I can't figure out what Dinesh's position is in this debate.
I don't know what. Yeah, like I don't know. I'm sitting here trying to think. Like, I don't even know what Dinesh is arguing. Like, if this speech had a thesis, what would it be? Like, that's what I'm sitting here trying to figure out.
Mm-hmm. I'm rather confused because this debate is making me not understand how much about A&E literature to be a Christian. I'm rather lost now. If you want to learn about ancient Near Eastern literature, one, check out. You tackle ancient Near Eastern literature in your book a little bit, don't you?
I don't bring up much ancient Near Eastern literature outside of the Bible, except for a few quotes when it comes to some of the stuff.
Yeah. I tackle it a lot in this channel, on my channel. So just look at like my Jesus and Mark's Gospel series or whatever it's called. You'll find it eventually. If I were you and you don't know much about ancient Near Eastern literature, I would start with a video where it's titled like, "Are there dinosaurs in the Bible?" or something like that. And then from then on, like for a few months, I have a whole entire series talking about all this ancient Near Eastern stuff, and it's super helpful for a lot of people. Also, just one last thing. Did this guy debate Ehrman?
I don't know, because Dinesh has done a lot of debates over the years, so I don't know. He might have. I don't know.
If I'm gonna look into that after this, and depending on how long ago it was, we might have to do.
He did. He did.
All right.
It was a theodicy, God, and suffering, a debate between Dinesh and Bart Ehrman.
Ooh.
Oh yeah, I can't believe I didn't say this. Okay, well that's me for real. If you want ancient Near Eastern literature stuff, Unseen Realm, you have to read it. It's a must read. You're not a Christian if you've not read Unseen Realm. Just kidding. All right, here we go.
Let's do it.
The Christian reading is Jesus is the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. So when Isaac says, "Where's the lamb?" and Abraham says, "God will provide," it is a foreshadowing of a significant event in the New Testament. Now, again, as I say, the Jews and the Christians argued this for 3 centuries and more. I'm not even trying to adjudicate who's right, but I'm saying you're waltzing in, coming with neither of these 2 assumptions. In fact, I assume you think that the Old Testament is as mythological as the New.
No.
Okay.
Sorry,
And I guess what I'm saying is that people who read the Bible to understand what the Bible is trying to say and what we can learn from it, do what the Jewish rabbis did and do what theologians like Augustine and Anselm and so many others have done. They don't really do what you're doing, which is saying, hey, Luke must have talked to a guy who thought it happened over here. But in fact, this guy says the roof was thatched, but another guy says they let the guy in through the roof who had to be healed. Contradiction. Yeah. And I'm like, is this your way of trying to say the Bible is not true?
Yes, it is. The Old Testament. Yes,
okay.
It's precisely what I'm doing. The Old Testament is not fully mythological. I think Genesis is mythological. I think that Exodus makes more of an attempt at history that has mythological undertones. I think that the military conquests I mentioned in my opening statements are attempts at describing literal historical events. I think that Psalms are poetry. I think that Job is mythology. I don't think a man called Job actually existed. Right? And so there are lots of different genres here. The reason I'm asking about the contradictions in the gospel, and I understand if you don't want to talk about the specific example of Egypt and Jerusalem, fine, whatever. Maybe you can send me an email about it later or something, that's fine. But the reason I bring it up is to say that there are lots of these. And in each case, if we try to look at why they might be contradicting each other, the reasons I think we're given tell us that the historicity of this text should be in dispute. For example, I mentioned the date of Jesus' death. The Synoptic Gospels specifically place this after the Passover meal. They have the Last Supper as the Passover meal.
Okay.
John uniquely sets it before the Passover because he has the theological purpose of wanting to depict Jesus as the Passover lamb. Now, this is a contradiction if the Gospels are supposed to be historical accounts of what happened to Jesus, which I imagine if we were having a debate about whether Christianity were true, about whether the God of the Bible existed, you might put forward, say, an argument for the resurrection of Jesus. You might say, well, we have good historical evidence to think that Jesus rose from the dead, and you might point to the story of the crucifixion and the disciples seeing him after he died. This is a common thread. The problem is that if we're treating it as historical in an area like that, then we have to engage with it as a historical text. Why would they contradict each other? I would say for the same reason that Luke contradicts Matthew in birth narratives, because they're attempting to make a theological point, which tells us at least, and maybe you think that the New Testament is an entirely theological and in no way a historical text. Would you agree at least that the New Testament writers are seemingly willing to adapt the historicity of an event in order to serve a theological point? Would you agree with that?
Yes and no. I would agree that.
Well, that definitely is a contradiction.
Well, it's not a contradiction because, well, I mean, Thucydides is relaying historical events to make a moral point about the nature of politics, and both are completely consistent with each other. Sure. It's not as if Thucydides is, so he's a student of power politics. He is making a point. His speeches are driven at making a point, but the point is excavated out of the actual events. Now, I think that there's a reason that we're given 4 perspectival accounts of Jesus's life, and they're not identical. In fact, as I say, if they were identical, you wouldn't need 4. The point of reading these, and I think the way to read them. Let me say a word. If you want to determine veracity, you have to operate a little bit like a jury, and by that I mean pick up the Gospel of Mark, the first of the Gospels. Now, by the way, these Gospels are written very proximate to the events they describe, and I say this by the standards of, we're talking about historicity of any historical document.
70 AD, would you say, for Mark?
Yes, I mean, I would say within decades of the events that they describe.
But
Yes.
crucially, would you agree with most historians that this happened, for example, after the destruction of the Jerusalem temple, thereby allowing the author of Mark to put the prediction in the words of Jesus' mouth without being anything miraculous?
This is a highly debated point because Mark's gospel leaves off incomplete and has what seems to be
That's where I stopped. This is where I stopped listening because I got so irritated at that response to this question.
Here's what I think Alex should have done here. I think he should have been like, okay, cool. Let's take one dimension, which is like strict historical facts, right? Like, and say, okay, on that dimension, and then pick one of these contradictions. And he should have been like, okay, can we agree that if we're reading this as strict history, either Luke or John, one of these is wrong from a strict historical standpoint, either on where they fled or when Jesus died, whatever, and get him to admit that strictly from historical standpoint it can't be A and not A. And then he could have I think probably started to build up a better argument and probably bulldoze Dinesh more, because he'd been like, okay, everybody, Dinesh has admitted there are things in the Bible that are not historically true, and those are in the Gospels. And so now we're just going to have a talk about what more things fall into that category or something like that. I mean, I think Alex is doing a decent job of pressing him here.
Yeah. Dinesh just doesn't do a good job of answering any of these questions. Alex brought up the question of the dating of the Gospel of Mark in virtue of the destruction of the temple. Dinesh's response is something about the long ending of Mark, which, like, that I think that's just an indictment as to like his tracking of the historical debates surrounding the Bible. If you don't even know about the destruction of the temple, the matter of 70 AD when it comes to the dating of the Gospels, I don't know what you're doing taking this debate. I'm sorry if that makes me sound like a jerk. It's just
no. I think that's a fair point. And to be honest, so you say you stopped at this point. There is nothing of value after this that I can remember. Like, it really is just at some point it's just them talking over each other all the time, and Dinesh like saying like, "I need to let me finish this point." And Alex going, "Let me respond to it." No, and it just kind of degenerates from here. Like it's. Yeah, it's not good after this point.
Fair enough.
It was good before this point. It's just
what time is it? How much time you got left?
I've got nothing else going on.
I have an hour and a half, so I'm ready to be heard again.
Okay.
All right.
What's to be said of Alex's criticism here? From what I'm hearing, saying the events are out of order because they are forged for purposes. I don't think Dinesh understands what's being said. So, in this part, like where we just paused, right? Alex is saying, and this is a typical, like this is one of the typical arguments you'll hear for like a post 70 AD dating of the Gospels. I feel bad for Ryan because he's getting cut off. Here.
It's fine.
For post 70 AD dating of the Gospels. So the basic idea is like, look, hey, the Gospels contain knowledge of the destruction of the temple in 70 AD, when the temple got destroyed in Jewish war. And then basically they'll point to this pericope where it says, hey, where it has Jesus saying, hey, the temple will be destroyed. And we'll employ some methodological naturalism and say like, hey, prophecy like that doesn't happen. So therefore this was probably dated post 70 AD. I have a video on this type of argument. And the basic idea is like, we have Josephus writing about a guy who was also named Jesus ben Ananias, who also predicted the destruction of the temple, probably around, I think it was 60 AD. I can't remember off the top of my head. He predicted the destruction 10 years earlier. And we're fine dating that pericope that Josephus has to prior to 70 AD. And the reason why he was probably able to predict that is because he could sense the rising political tensions between Rome and the Jews. And so the question then is like, okay, so if this guy could do it, why couldn't the historical Jesus of the Gospels also do that? So we don't have to put in some sort of predictive prophecy into the mix. You can be like a strict methodological naturalist and still say, hey, this is understandable. This isn't unexpected on the condition this was true, blah, 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 blah. I have a long video on this topic, but yeah.
Before we hit play again, so for people who care or are potentially concerned about the style of Alex's argument, you have two options here with he's trying to say, okay, listen, you know, this gospel author, they changed this thing here, so all like they're theologically motivated and ooh, spooky, because you know what else could they have changed? You have two options here, like probably two main options here. One is you could push back on the idea of there being a bona fide contradiction here, and with the moving of whether or not John moves, like the death of Jesus, stuff like that. I think there are pretty decent harmonizations for. Gleason Archer has some in his book, Encyclopedia of Bible Difficulties. I think somebody said Craig Blomberg has addresses this in his Gospels thing. I don't remember Blomberg's thing on it, but I know
the very basic idea is there's Passover is a week-long celebration. And there's many different meals. So there's like things called the Haggadah. Then there's the actual Passover meal. And like the day of preparation isn't the day of preparation for the Passover meal. The day of preparation was the day before the Sabbath, which is Saturday. And so like in the Gospels, whenever you see the word, I forget what the word is off the top of my head. The basic idea is like you see this day of preparation to refer to Friday constantly. So that's all you.
Yeah.
Like,
so you can harmonize it. So that's like option one. But then option two is you could do something like what Mike Licona does. And Licona just came out with a book arguing for his kind of philosophy with doing this. Is Licona's going to be like, yeah, like someone like John, he does shift around the ordering of these events to make these kind of theological points. But in doing that, John is operating within the bounds of what is normal for the flexibility of ancient Greco-Roman biographies. And that doesn't mean that John just like can be like written off, and therefore we can be like, okay, he's not concerned with doing his historicity at all. So someone like Licona would be like, no, they're still concerned with telling an accurate representation of the story, but it was understood in that time that authors of this genre could be flexible with this. And then we can do this we can compare what John says with, like what Luke says, and we can find this overlap and things like that. So no matter whether or not you want to concede there's an actual like bona fide contradiction here, when it comes down to like the reliability of the Gospels or things like that, they're not going to, the objector is not going to make much headway either way.
Yeah. All right. Well, if it doesn't get much better, we'll kill some time here and just keep going through it until my wife texts me
Let's do
and
it.
tells me to come hang out with her and the kids.
At the very end, an added section. I don't want to debate that little fragment of Mark. Here's what I'm getting at.
Well, the
If you've
resurrection?
never read the Bible, and we've all read the Bible in a way, I was raised Catholic, and so I was habituated to going to Sunday Mass and sort of felt like I hadn't gotten to the Bible. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I've heard these stories read and so on. But it was a completely different experience for me as an adult to go back with critical skepticism and just read the book of Mark straight through. It has the complete ring of authenticity. And I say this because not only does it give you little details that don't really seem to even belong there. It's clearly not written with a polemical purpose exclusively. Mark will tell you things that not only seem irrelevant, but at other times undermine what he's trying to say. And that is the true ring of authenticity. Because if someone would... What's that?
An example?
Well, here's an example. In the Jewish tradition, the testimony of a woman was considered inherently suspect, but the testimony of men generally reliable. And therefore, not that the testimony of women was disregarded altogether, but you needed, for example, many women to say the same thing. Yeah. Now, the Gospels tell us that when Jesus was crucified and put in the tomb, if I were Mark and I were Luke and I were trying to be inventive and I were trying to establish a truth for posterity, I would not have it that a group of, let's just say, hysterical women, Mary Magdalene, whoever it was, a group of women go to the tomb and they're the ones who find the tomb empty. This is like a little dubious because most people are going to go, well, yeah, we know, but women, you know. So here's an example of the Gospels insisting upon a point that would only make sense if that was actually the way it happened.
Allow me to answer that, if I may.
Go ahead.
If I may. This is a commonly presented argument for the historicity of the resurrection, which, by the way, now we're talking as...
Well, I'm not necessarily... No, hold on. I didn't say it's an argument for the historicity of the resurrection. I said it was an argument...
Let me say a word.
Okay.
Now we're talking about these texts. They are historical texts. The thing about the women is, look, this is quite straightforward to me. Who anoints bodies? Who goes to tombs and anoints bodies after someone dies? It's not men, it's women. And so if the authors of the Gospels had the men go to the tomb to anoint the body, which is what Mary and the other women were doing when they went to the tomb, that itself would be very strange and give us reason to doubt the historicity of the event. In other words, it's like, if there's a task that women do, and that task is how Jesus' empty tomb is discovered, then why would he invent it? Why would they invent a story that has men going and doing it? Secondly, you said that you need multiple women's testimony. How many women go to the tomb? Multiple. Thirdly, what do the women do immediately after seeing the empty tomb? They run and tell the men who come and verify it for us. Right. So I don't think that this fulfills the criteria of embarrassment at all. In fact, I think the opposite is true. I think that if this was an invented story, I'm not saying it is, by the way, but if it were, then of course we could expect the people who discover the empty tomb to be women, because it's women who go to anoint the body at the tomb.
Okay. So let's put together...
Okay, so I wanted to say something here because his response to this is really bad. Again, I have a video on this topic. I don't remember what it's called, but I will pull it up really quick. Where is it? Shocking revelation: is the empty tomb a hoax? And then the thumbnail says fact or fiction. Ooh. I'm not going to go through everything. The basic idea, though, is that there's answers to this. And it wasn't like the idea that women were like necessarily the ones to do the burial rites and all this other stuff isn't true. It was customary. So like if you look at early Talmudic tractates, for instance, we have the following law. And it says, a man may shroud and gird the corpse of a man, but not that of a woman. A woman may shroud and gird the corpse of a man or of a woman. And that's the Semahat 12:10. And then you have like examples in the Bible, like Abraham is buried by his sons, Isaac and Ishmael in Genesis 25. Isaac is buried by Jacob and Esau in Genesis 35. I mean, I can just keep on going on. In the New Testament, John the Baptist is buried by his disciples, which were men. You have Stephen, who's buried by godly men after his martyrdom in Acts. Ananias and Sapphira are entombed by a group of young men. And I can go on and on. So this whole idea that it was women who were the ones that did this all the time and all this other stuff. Not to mention the fact that if they're going to make up that allows for men to, like, if we're going to operate on this hypothesis that the authors made up the gospel, the women at the tomb account, right? If they really want to go for this type of motif, like making something up, they could have done a Roman guard, right? Because they could have done so many different people that it would have been a better option. Watch the video if you really want to know more on that, though. Sorry.
That's the only point I was going to make is like, okay, if you're thinking they're going so far as to make up like a resurrection and resurrection experiences, then they don't really need to bother with this whole woman thing. They're clearly fine with making stuff up. They can make up something better. And early early polemics against Christianity, they did take advantage of this fact. Like they did take advantage of, like, oh, just hysterical women. Like that's how this whole thing gets started. So this was a significant point that the early church ironically dealt with.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I just said and you just said, and let's ask the question, based upon what you said and what I said, did it happen that way? And I would submit that what you have done, see, you're doing special pleadings. You could argue I'm doing special pleadings, but I would admit that the thrust of the Bible and the thrust of the story is, in fact, aimed at delivering a truth from revelation.
That's fine.
What you're trying to do is saying, all right, I can't contest that because that's outside the domain of reason. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to adopt sort of the nitpicking strategy. And because we got 4 accounts,
well, hold on, you're the one who brought that up. You're the one who said that
I did.
Women discovering.
And I'm saying nothing you've said has even slightly refuted it.
You don't think anything I just said refuted the idea that would be something you wouldn't expect from the gospel authors if it were invented?
No, here's what I'm saying. I'm saying that let's look at what we agree on, what we disagree on. You agree that in that culture, the testimony of women in general counts for less.
I think this is something that Josephus tells us, but it's impossible to know what sort of culturally people actually thought at times. It's impossible for us to know. But I'm happy to grant it. Yeah, sure.
It's impossible for us to know, even though Josephus says it. Okay,
but that's in a court of law, right?
No, but what I'm saying is, if you're applying the is it impossible for us to know, I would suggest to you it is impossible for us to know that it was the absolute and unwavering duty of women to provide all the ointments. You stated that as a fact.
No.
I would say it's impossible for us to know.
What I'm saying is that if somebody's reading this text and you say, well, if this were invented, why would it be women who discover the tomb? That would be embarrassing for them, the so-called embarrassment criterion. I'm saying, would it not be just, it's not the fact that we're told why they're going to the tomb to anoint the body. Is this not just reason enough?
No.
I mean, I'm not the one claiming I know how this went down, by the way. And also, you just accused me a second ago of special pleading. I wanted to ask you what it was that I'm specially pleading.
Well, what I'm saying is that you have an event. These events are described with great precision and a sort of eyewitness presence there. Now, we know in some cases there weren't eyewitnesses, but they're nevertheless described, this is the way it happened. And 4 guys are telling you their point of view, right?
Yeah, none of them the women who actually discovered the tomb, by the way.
No, you're not hearing from the women. I agree. You're 4 male gospel writers, apparently. Now, I lost my train of thought for a second. Sorry.
But I also don't want to get too caught up on this specific example, but I suppose we'll have to sort of leave it with the audience in the live stream. The point that I'm trying to make is that
Can we pause
the historicity of at least some of this.
I think in general, Dinesh could have made better points. If you want to say, hey, listen, there are embarrassing things in Mark, there were better options than this. I was talking with my dissertation team the other day, and we were talking about, I'm pretty sure it's in Mark that Jesus has to do the miracle twice with the guy putting mud on his eyes, because it works like halfway.
Yeah,
that's kind of like weirdly embarrassing. You know what I mean? Like if I'm like all right, I'm gonna sit down and try to convince this guy is God. Oh, but he has to do this miracle twice because the first time, it's just a bunch of trees walking around. That's not gonna do. We gotta get you like stuff like that's weird. Like there's things in the Gospels where Jesus is like casting out demons and he has to like rebuke them like and tell them multiple times. Like you're able to like resist them for a little bit. Like there's better arguments than what Dinesh went to here, but that's all I have to say on that.
Yeah.
Is important for Christianity. The historicity of the life of Jesus. Like if it were discovered historically speaking that a man called Jesus never existed, that would completely undermine Christianity.
Are you saying that?
No, I'm not saying
okay.
that.
Let me ask you a different question.
I'm saying that historically it matters. The crucifixion, the resurrection, these matters which historically.
Pause for a second.
So when we're dealing with a historical account.
So this is something. Okay, so I feel like Alex and Dinesh are both putting forward a position and then backpedaling a lot in the backing up like a minute or two, and then for the rest of this. Because he puts forward this whole like hypothesis of like, well, look, we know that this is like the way like the women worked. We know this is how things work, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, but I don't know how any of this works. Like he says this and I'm like, what are you going on about? And then what you're going to see continually from both of them for the rest of this, if I remember correctly, was both of them making a position and then backpedaling. And it's just painful. It's just very painful.
I'm ready. I'm ready to be frustrated.
Okay.
Even more frustrated.
What happened when they're riddled with contradictions. I think that's a problem. If you don't think that's a problem, then that's fine. But I think that the people listening and wanting to find out if the Bible is true might see that as reason to undermine the trust of the text.
No. First of all, almost everything that we know about those events in terms of modern historical reliability, for example, where is the site of Jesus's crucifixion? Unknown.
Allegedly
disputed. There are a couple of potential sites.
Probably the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. I'll make a video on that.
But it's not known. What day of the year was Jesus born? Unknown.
Mm-hmm.
We think Jesus lived for 33 years, but let's say that one of the Gospels said it was 33 and the other one said it was 34. Do you think that would actually refute Christianity?
No,
it would not. It would actually be quite understandable that you'd have 2 guys.
No.
That's not the debate.
If I was Alex here, I would be like, okay, but if one of them said it was 33 and one of them said it was 34, would we agree that there was a historically false statement in one of the Gospels? And I feel like you could have made a lot of headway there.
Yeah.
It feels weird giving debate points and tips to the atheist here, but at least the atheist is playing the game. At least Alex, I feel like, is trying to play the game more than Dinesh is.
He's on topic. I mean, he really is.
Yeah,
consistently.
And he's trying to keep it on topic.
And they would get that, and they'd be off on that, and this contradiction would be trivial because the issue is not whether Jesus lived for 33 or 34 years old. The issue is something.
That's a different kind, because if you could tell me that the reason why they had specifically chosen those ages was to serve a theological point, knowing that they're willing to sort of adapt history in order to make a theological point, I wouldn't say that point alone undermines Christianity. What I would say is that it undermines our trustworthiness in the Bible. I'm not saying that any one of these contradictions can tell us Christianity is false.
No, but I'm saying
firstly, the question is not if Christianity is true, it's whether the Bible is true. It may be the case that a man called Jesus came down to earth, rose from the dead. It's just that the gospel accounts get the details wrong.
Is this true, Ryan?
I don't know if I could fully say this, but it gets so weird at the end where I like I said earlier, I have no idea what Dinesh's position is in this debate. Because when I look at the whole thing, I'm just like, I have no idea where he wants to land. I have no idea.
Which means that the Bible is not correct.
No, it doesn't mean that.
Is true. It means that Christianity is true, but the Bible is false. That's perfectly consistent.
I'm simply saying that what you're doing is you are supplying a motive that is completely made up and that I could engage in exactly. Let's just take, for example, the 33 versus the 34 years. Now, here's what I'm saying. If there was such a contradiction and I were being you, I would say, oh, the reason that Matthew said it was 33 is because 3 is the number of the Trinity. And so 33 has a certain theological resonance because 3 and 3 is 33. Hold on. And then I would come around and say, well, the reason the other guy said 34 is actually 3 plus 4 is 7. God made the world in 7 days. 7 is known to be a number fraught with theological significance. And I'm saying this is basically Alex BS.
Dinesh, the gospel writers tell us that's why it happened. They say that the reason the family went to Egypt was to fulfill the prophecy of Hosea.
Okay, and so you
so in other words, if the gospel writer, and now imagine that the gospel writers had written what you just said. Imagine in the actual text, one of them said he was 33 when he died because of the number 3 and its significance.
Correct.
And another said that he was 34 because of the number 4 and its significance. That would be a contradiction, and in that instance, not just a historical contradiction, but a spiritual and theological one too.
Actually, no, it actually wouldn't.
Oh, see, come on,
it wouldn't. I'll tell you why.
You don't think that's a contradiction?
No, it's not a contradiction at all because the gospel writers are constantly
contradicting each other.
No, not contradicting each other. If they were constantly contradicting each other, you wouldn't have spent half an hour on a single event that, frankly, I haven't even heard of. In fact, no one's ever heard of. I've never ever heard anyone discuss this in any context. So we fish out
which event?
This prophecy about Hosea.
He just told on himself so bad there.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking. It's like, I know people have talked about this, and if you haven't heard it, it's because you're not reading books about the things you're accepting debates on.
You're not reading the scholarship.
I'm ready. Let's go. This is getting heated.
I'm processing my shock right now. Hold on. Wow. Okay.
Hosea, I'll go back and look at all this, but what I'm trying to get at is if you had a plethora of contradictions, you would be spending the entire debate on one that I'm sure no one in the audience has heard of either. But okay, you've heard of it. Probably because you've been listening to his YouTube channel.
You don't think that this is a highly discussed point of contention in the Gospels? The flight to Egypt is a contradiction.
The flight to Egypt. Look, the flight to Egypt is an important event.
Okay, Dinesh, also you said, why could you only bring up this one example? Take your pick. The date of Jesus' crucifixion, whether they're to take a staff or not to take a staff. The dating of Jesus flipping the tables at the temple. Mary Magdalene and what she says at the tomb. When the temple curtain rips. In the Gospel of Luke, it says that this happens before Jesus' death, and in the Gospels of Matthew and Mark, it says that it happens afterwards. We can go through any of these contradictions that you like, but the problem is that what you're going to tell me is that it's trivial, and then when I try to explain that it's not trivial, you say, oh, well, I haven't even heard of it, and no one else really cares about this. When other people do, by the way, this is a highly discussed point of contention in the Gospel. All I'm asking you to do is say that this is, when I mentioned the staff in my opening statement, and I said that whether or not they take staff is a totally trivial contradiction. I'm not bothered by that. If I were a Christian, I would say, yeah, of course, because the texts are not going to perfectly accord. But for some reason, Augustine could not accept this, and so comes up with this ludicrous idea of a literal staff and a metaphorical staff that Jesus is talking about. If you were willing to just say, yes, this is a contradiction, but that doesn't upset the method of Christianity, I think it would be a much more defensible and respectable approach. But instead, it seems that you're unwilling to admit that there's even a single contradiction in these texts.
I am saying that the texts are written from 4 different points of view.
Do they contradict?
And it is quite possible that on details, Matthew tells you things that are not in Mark or different than Mark, contradict Mark. Yes, contradict Mark. And so the point is, here's my point. You're acting, look at it this way. You would be scoring a point if you could say, God wrote 4 books and they contradict each other. Just like if you're able to say, Dinesh said this in the beginning of the debate and that at the end of the debate, Dinesh is contradicting himself. On the other hand, if we have 2 guys who are here today to go and write an account of this debate, right? And then we look at their accounts, which are authentic, first person. I was their accounts with a lot of detail. Yep. And one guy says, for example, the lights were dark. The other guy says the lights were dim. Or one guy says, for example, that Dinesh was sitting at a 45-degree angle. Another guy says it was a 50-degree angle. Yeah. These are not. And then someone goes, Dinesh was sitting at a 43.5-degree angle because he thought this was a way of maximizing his rhetorical effectiveness in the audience.
Where are we? I don't have anything to say. I don't know. It's just, I don't know what is going on in Dinesh's life. I don't know what he thinks he's doing here.
Like I told you, like
It's just,
it just goes downhill. Like they just start talking over each other. It's not clear to me what point is even being attempted to be made. Like it's a car crash. Like it's just a car crash from here on out.
we can keep playing.
Oh gosh, man.
Somebody said, now imagine somebody said, Alex is wearing a blue jacket, and the reason he was wearing a blue jacket, someone said it's a blue jacket, someone else said it's a red jacket. Who cares? You're quite right. But if somebody said specifically, I know that the reason he was wearing a blue jacket was because there's an upcoming election in the UK that's just been announced, and he was trying to represent the Conservative Party. And somebody else said, I know that the reason he was wearing red, and in fact, he told us himself that the reason he was wearing red is because he wanted to support Labour in the upcoming general election in his home country.
Okay, perfect
He would say
example.
that is a contradiction and means that one of you wasn't paying close enough attention, not just to the color of my jacket, but the very message that I was trying to get across.
That could well be true, but what I'm getting at is we know.
Can you pause for a second? So I don't know if you guys are aware of UK politics, but they're having a big election on July 4th. And so nothing says to me like the importance of like British politics, except for having an election on July 4th. And so I just love this. Also, I don't know if you guys know when our election in the US is. It's on November 5th. Which is Guy Fawkes Day, which is like this when there was this failed attempt from Guy Fawkes to like overthrow and blow up the parliament and all that. So we're in a bizarre year where the UK decided let's have our election on the day where a whole bunch of like rebels like across the pond decided to say screw you UK, and they're having and then we're having our election on the day where it basically says. Yeah, well, just the same time where like someone was like, "Screw you, UK." So like it's a bizarre. We're living in a bizarre timeline at the moment.
I appreciate that interjection because it brought my blood pressure down a little bit.
Just from normal experience, that if the two of us are sitting in a cafe and we see an accident, these kinds of differences are normal. So let's just say, for example, here's God showing us a revelation, and the revelation can be whatever it is, and you and I write an account of it. And somebody finds that my account of it not only is different than yours, but let's just say, for example, I go, oh, Jesus was wearing a cloak. Another guy goes, he's wearing a robe. For anyone to actually think that this is, in fact, a refutation of the truth of the Bible is ludicrous. So anyway, in our format, we've agreed to do a flip where you've been asking me questions now.
I'm frustrated a little bit because because Alex has brought some actual contentious like passages forward and been like, hey, these seem to be like real contradictions, and then this guy's just like, oh well, let's put those aside for now, let's tackle these things over here that are like clearly just ludicrous. Like what that's like the same thing as talking about atheism and calling it stupid, because I heard an atheist that thinks nothing can come, like everything can come from nothing. Or an atheist that thinks like the laws of logic don't exist, or whatever you want to say, right? Like, it's the same thing. Like, can we take on the strongest case and like show why it doesn't work? Can we do that? Or, gosh, man.
Let me ask you something.
If you've got
I'm
some
ready to see Dinesh's intense cross-examination skills. I'm ready to be blown away.
Are we coming up on the clip that I mentioned? Because I remember seeing like a short.
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
Let me turn around and ask you questions in a sort of what I think is a more fundamental mode, because it gets to what the Bible really is. Do you think that the universe had a beginning?
I don't know. I would suspect yes.
You suspect yes.
Yeah, sure.
Oh no.
How did the writers of the book of Genesis know that?
I have no idea. If I'm
Did
going
they guess?
to be cynical about this, if they did guess, it would be 50-50 guess. And I also think that if we had
Would it be a 50-50 guess?
Yeah, and it might even be worse than that for you, because if we had some kind of scientific popular hypothesis, because of course the Big Bang might not have been the beginning of everything, who knows, right? But like whatever the popular scientific hypothesis is, if it were pointing to an infinite universe, for example, as Einstein thought we lived in, then I'm sure that people would open Genesis, they would say that in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, and say that the earth just means the earth itself, right? Like I think it would be easily interpretable on either account.
All right. So one of my professors at Dartmouth was Robert Jastrow, head of the Mount Wilson Laboratory, one of the great astronomers of the 20th century. Sure. So Jastrow writes in his book, God and the Astronomers, that for 250 years, modern science has been attempting to discover whether the universe had a beginning. And you can think of these scientists as ascending a very tall mountain in which there are many pathways. And for many years, with the steady state hypothesis and so on, there were beliefs that the universe was eternal, It never had a beginning. In fact, that was the prevailing point of view. And then Jastrow argues it's almost as if we reached the top of the mountain and there was a bunch of Hebrew prophets or theologians sitting there, which had been there from the beginning. So I'm describing now.
I'm sorry. I knew when he said the
scientist.
mountain. I knew when he said the mountain, it was going to be that quote of when we finally scale the top mountain, when we look on the other side, all the church fathers will be standing there.
Yep.
Sorry, I don't. Besides my I don't have anything of value to add. I just when he had said the mountain thing, I was like, no, not this. Sorry. Keep going.
I'm
Actually pause it. Pause it. It's not as if there weren't pre-scientific philosophical debates about whether or not the universe exists. It's not like there was this like history of like both Christian and Islamic, philosophical tradition about like the universe and whether or not it begins. Like all of that type of reasoning can and did go on pre-scientific age. Like would Dinesh come out like I almost want Dinesh to argue with like a really hardcore Muslim apologist and be like, okay, so you agree like the Quran is inspired because we also said that that the universe began to exist and look, we even have Muslim philosophers arguing this. I mean, yeah,
there's a big debate about how to even interpret Plato. You've got different schools of thought where if you're looking at Plato, is Plato saying that the universe has an absolute beginning created out of some previous stuff? So it's not creation out of nothing, but does the universe have an absolute beginning or did it always exist? And there's this whole absurd debate throughout history about the proper way to interpret that and the whole reception history of that. So this is all pre-Christian, a lot of these sort of issues. And I think it's funny you mentioned the Muslim stuff because that's about to come up in a second.
That attends to a discovery and I think it is out of the spirit of that discovery for you to go, oh yeah, I mean, it could have been this. It's like tossing a coin. It isn't like tossing a coin. This is a question that's been argued for 2 centuries and only resolved in the last several decades, and resolved decisively in one side and the other. And the fact that you're not willing to just straight out say, yeah, it is actually an astounding fact that we now know.
No. Look, the scientific method has also revealed to us that the Earth was formed about 4.5 billion years ago. That is much later than the sun. The Old Testament account, the Hebrew Bible account, tells us that it was the other way around. So got that bit wrong.
All right. So we're yes. The Bible is not.
So sometimes it gets things right. Sometimes it gets things wrong.
The Bible is not science. It's not listing out a scientific.
Well, now hold on a second. You can't now move the goalpost, especially if you're still going to miss.
The issue. Well.
That was a killer line.
You
can't change the goalpost, especially if you're gonna miss.
Dude. Yeah. Oh my gosh. That was a good rejoinder.
Mm-hmm.
I just love the like couple seconds of silence.
That I knew that was gonna happen, but I'm still like watching like the Rio clip is like shocking to me.
Mm-hmm.
No, the issue of the origin of the universe is extremely critical.
You just told me that Genesis predicted, or knew about, or somehow knew about, the scientific hypothesis of the origin of the universe. Then when I pointed out another scientific observation that doesn't call Genesis, you tell me that Genesis isn't a scientific text to begin with.
Well, if you read Genesis, it is making a astounding claim, which pertains to God. Obviously, God created the heavens and the earth.
Is it making a scientific claim or not? Is it telling us how the universe scientifically formed or not?
It's not telling us how the universe scientifically formed, because if it did, they would be outlining the history of the Big Bang.
Then what's the relevance of bringing this up in the first place?
Because it is stating a conclusion, not a process. It's not telling you how the universe was formed. Right. It's not telling you about.
It also doesn't tell us how the sun was formed, but it tells us that it was formed after the Earth was. It tells us that that's the case. That's wrong. It's incorrect.
Show me.
I don't have a Bible.
Okay. Well, I've read that passage maybe a dozen times. I have never spotted this contradiction that you're describing. But I'll go back and look at it again. But
did he just not realize what happened?
Keep going. Just before you pause, just go for
again,
another.
What day is it that God makes the sun? Day 4, day 3 or day 4, something around there.
You're right, but the mainstream of the Christian tradition does. It obviously can't be day 4 because the concept of day in the original Hebrew doesn't mean day.
Sure, but day 4 comes after day 1, right?
Well, it's describing obviously epochs or periods.
Yeah,
yes.
So actually it's much worse, because how the sun is created much later than the Earth was.
Well, not necessarily. Well, show me.
I don't know. I mean, we can read through it. We can find Genesis.
Yeah, okay.
I don't think that would be the best use of our time. I mean, we can do it if you really want to, but what I'm trying to say is that, like, it's not a science.
Okay. I don't know what views you guys take on Genesis, the 7 days, on my view, cosmic temple inauguration, and the days are meant to be reflective of each other. So you have like the I can't remember off the top of my head the pattern because it's been so long, but the basic idea is like it wasn't 7 literal days. There's a big debate as to what yom means. I don't think that actually matters in this context because of the type of literature and the rhetorical goals that the biblical authors have in mind when it comes to Genesis. So that's my view. I don't know why I was hoping this would happen. Dinesh, I still don't know how to say his name. Is it Dinesh? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know why I was hoping Dinesh would somehow magically say that kind of stuff. I'm disappointed, and I shouldn't be. But anyway.
But no, like you're right, because like I mean, I've seen different commentators talk about how sometimes when you're looking at it, you could even see it as like a worship song, like a call and response. So in like days 1 through 3, it talks about like creating kind of spaces for different things, and on days 4 through 6, you see it being filled. So day 1, it's like created light, and well, the corresponding day 4, okay, well there's the sun now. So it's got a particular structure to it that has a very particular purpose. Something according to our current understandings of scientific methodology, that's just not what's in view. But yeah, I mean, Dinesh just doesn't want to mention those things. I don't know why. I don't know why he's even in this debate. I mean, really, at this point, because it just doesn't seem like he really came prepared to talk about the actual debate topic.
Dinesh is a professional shoulder shrugger.
That was funny. I'm just pulling something up really quick.
While he pulls that up, how much do you guys think they got paid to do this?
Oh gosh, I would. Okay, so this debate took place in the UK. Is that right?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know why I said yeah. I have no clue. I was overconfident.
Yeah. No, because I think I remember the opening statement, which we skipped all over. Like the two guys that are opening it. Yeah, I think they were English. Yeah, so they flew out like Dinesh to come to this thing. So there's some decent money being thrown around a bit.
All right, I'm just gonna pull something up here. Somebody asks. I'll give you the quick version here. This is from a lecture I gave last year. What am I, week 2? Okay. So this isn't like the full-fledged thing, but like here, the basic, gosh, these freaking, I'll just do it in this. The basic idea is like, I take the 7 days to be like cosmic temple inauguration. So for instance, the construction of the tabernacle was completed in 7 stages. You have the ordination of temple priests being 7 days. Solomon's temple was constructed in 7 years, dedicated to God on the 7th-day festival in the 7th month. Solomon's dedication speeches given in 7 petitions. So the number 7 has like this numerological motif to kingship, ascension, stuff like that. And you see this in other places, not just in Israel, but you see this in other places. So in ancient Greece, we have the Gudea cylinders. It's a Sumerian myth. The building of, I can't pronounce that right now, Ningirisu's temple, 7-day temple dedication. You have Baal's cosmic temple completed in 7 days. And then so like when you have the 7 days of creation, it's God setting the cosmos up as his temple. And then when you have a day 1, then you can actually see the patterns in the days too. So like day 1, the light and the dark. Day 4, the luminaries. That's the lights. Day 2 is the sky and the sea. Day 5, flying and swimming animals. Day 3, land and plants. Day 6, land animals. The basic idea is God has set up the whole cosmos as his temple. I don't have a video on this, unfortunately, but hopefully that helps at least a little bit for now for those of you that are confused about this topic. Again, I can make a video on the topic if you want.
This isn't important, but the debate took place in New York City.
Oh, it took place in New York City. So that means they flew Alex out to.
I guess. Yeah. The Lobinger Theater at Linnean College. So we were both wrong.
Went terribly wrong.
but we're big enough to admit it.
I mean, I'm going to backpedal and change my position.
I thought about making a snarky remark there, and I took it back.
No, I'm gonna take the low road and just say, look, there are certain things that reason cannot establish. Do you know where the universe came from? No, you don't. You don't. I'm just gonna change the topic.
Were you there? Yeah.
Oh gosh, pull the Ken Ham. Were you there?
Yeah. So somebody said in the chat, and this is one thing I do think that's worth responding to. Someone said that I'm starting to think we might be going a little too hard on Dinesh. He did it very poorly, but he's still a brother who Jesus died for. So here's the thing. I am critiquing Dinesh's performance. I'm not critiquing Dinesh as like a person, but in this avenue, like it is appropriate to critique his performance because he got up as a representative of Christianity in this. Yeah. And if Christians don't hold his feet to the fire, that makes us all look bad. It's an aspect of character. Like if we're gonna do a debate and we're gonna do a debate review, we can't just be bashing on Alex when he says stuff that are silly, and we will, and we have bashed on Alex in the past. Like we are equal opportunity, offenders when it comes to this. Like we will bash bad arguments. It's just we're being really harsh on Dinesh, or at least I'm being harsh on him. Because I see Dinesh making the most consistent line of really bad arguments. And so that's just what's constantly in my face.
Yeah. I will admit myself, I'm harsher on Christians in these contexts than I am atheists. But that's in virtue of the fact that I just care about this a lot. And I get mad, like for me at least, I get mad when I see Christians go up on a public forum like this and, in my opinion, almost come off as like not caring about the responsibility they've taken on in this context. Because I can only we have people in this chat that are like, well, how would you answer that? Mm-hmm. And like, thank God that they're here to listen to like some of at least the surface level answers and be pointed in the right direction. But how many more people are not going to see this stream? How many more people are going to see this debate and not have the answers and be like, oh shoot, like I shouldn't be a Christian? Like that's why I get mad about this. And I see nods of approval. So
you better be careful, dude. You're getting strong again. You might accidentally break your desk if you do that too much.
So what I'll say is I will tear apart everyone because I'm getting old and cranky and I've lost my patience for everything. But also, like at this point in my life, like I've got 2 PhDs, and like the amount of effort it takes to become an expert on something, and the amount of like careful sort of like study you try to do to get something right to prepare for this, and to see someone who has put, as far as I can tell, like 0 effort into preparing for this debate, I just find that deeply frustrating. Because Alex at least seems like he read a book or two. Like it's clear he's clearly read like some stuff on this topic. Whereas Dinesh, I just don't know what he's doing.
My
debate with Dillahunty, James, you watched how much I prepped for that.
I was sitting here and I was gonna say I was sitting here thinking about like Than prepped way more for his debate.
You did your homework for that,
Let me again. I'm not trying to.
I know firsthand how much Than prepped for that, and he prepped a lot. Like he took it seriously. He had people, do like, opposition, like debate. Like we pretended to be Dillahunty. Like I don't think I did the whole lot. Like some of our other friends did more of the playing Dillahunty. Like, he took it seriously, and that's what you do when you have a debate.
My prep notes were 153 pages. And if I was gonna debate Alex, it'd be bigger. It'd be.
But here's the thing:
bigger.
you like this is outside the realm of reason. Like reason, you can't reason this.
I'm done.
And,
I'm done. I'm shutting off the stream.
You're at 150 pages. How much of that is probability, which is just gobbledygook anyways?
Well, here's the thing: I can give my maximalist case without any sort of Bayesian reasoning. I could do an IBE type case, which
I don't think you can. Here's the thing: I think I think it's one of those things like maybe you have the power, but you don't have the ability to do what you just described. I think
Are you saying
have
that? Are you saying that because you just know that I like love Baze so much, Ryan?
yeah,
okay.
I think you know, it's like one of those things like
I have to tell Ryan
like,
about this.
and
I'm
like
sorry, I'm
omnipotence debates, there's like, oh, like God, you know, does he have the power to lift the rock? Or he has the power, but not
Hold
the
on. I have
It's
to
like
tell Ryan
that,
about
but
this.
like,
So
yeah.
so I was just like scrolling. I'm sorry, audience. We'll get back on track in a second.
We
I was
won't.
scrolling through the internet one day, and this YouTube short came up, and it was like, oh, best bicep exercise or something like that, right? And like the third or fourth one, I didn't even see what the exercise was called. I didn't even see what the exercise was. The title of the exercise was Bayesian curls. And as soon as I saw the word Bayesian curls, I just like noped out of the video and sent it to James right away.
Dude, I guarantee you, like, I'll say this and then we can get back. I'm just so confident. Like if Than told me he was about to present a maximalist case that wasn't Bayesian, I think he would try it, but I think he would be like an alcoholic trying to not drink. Like he would just lapse. He would just be trying, like someone would raise an objection and he would start trying to respond to it, and he's like, oh, I need my Bayesian framework, quick, get out here. And then it would just become Bayesian.
You know what? Just to spite, okay, one, my stage 2 contingency argument video is all deductive. So 2, I'm gonna make a maximalist case resurrection video, and I'm not gonna touch on Bayes at all, just to spite you.
So the Reverend Bayes will never come up at all.
Here's what I think.
Correct.
Hesitation. See, here's what would be more impressive to me, Than, is if you committed to a couple hours of TikTok live resurrection debates with me, in which you had to actually argue with people who were making responses and you wouldn't let yourself. Like, I would be more impressed if you got through that without doing Bayes, because if you're making a script and you're reading it, you can self-edit more. Like, you have the time and you can like exert it more. I'm just saying on the fly. Like, I don't know that. But this
Fine, let's do it.
I'm just psychologizing.
Next week we'll set it up. We'll go live on a TikTok, and I'm gonna run a either an IBE or a deductive style maximalist case.
I'm so ready.
Okay.
You guys heard it here.
Mm-hmm.
Move on. Let's move on.
Why not? It's not astonishing to me that like if you're making claims about the origin of the universe, especially in the case where if it is making a specific claim in the knowledge that there's a sort of infinite hypothesis and a beginning hypothesis, to take a 50-50 stab, it's not amazing to me. It would be more amazing to me if everything lined up and it gave us an otherwise unknowable historical scientific account of the beginning of the universe. But as you say, that's not even what Genesis is trying to do. So I don't understand how.
Yeah, I'm not saying that Genesis is trying to unfurl I'm saying that Genesis is making a statement about creation, and the statement about creation has a very startling scientific implication, because if there was a creation, then there obviously wasn't something, and then there was something.
But I mean, it's not just science which can tell us that the universe had a beginning. I mean, like there are lots of philosophical arguments that people have made. Perhaps most famously, Al-Ghazali, who argues against for the impossibility of a past infinite universe. And I think does so quite convincingly, with no reference to redshifting and no reference to scientific hypotheses. So it's perfectly possible for somebody to take a pretty studious and educated guess at the fact that the universe had a beginning long before the scientific method told us that was the case.
I'm not saying that it's not possible to make philosophical arguments, and of course, as you know, there was a tradition in ancient Greece of making philosophical arguments all over the place.
So maybe that's why.
Let me keep going. It's my time. Let me post.
I'm trying to answer your question. Maybe if you ask me how would they know, isn't this astounding? I would say, well, maybe they just had a philosophical tradition that taught the beginning of the universe, and that's where they got it from.
Except that
it's not inconceivable,
but it's not likely, because when we think of the tradition of Western civilization, we speak of Athens and Jerusalem. We speak of the origins of philosophy starting in about the 8th century BCE, and then really developing first in Greece. And then we talk about the tradition of revelation developing in ancient Jerusalem. So was there a hidden philosophical tradition? Possible, but probably unlikely.
Sorry, just pause it.
I know, I'm in pain too.
Philosophy doesn't just pop up in Greece. Like, okay, that's not like how I forgot the guy who does the history of philosophy without any gaps has
Peter Adamson.
Yes, yeah, he has a great series on Africana philosophy. If you think that the Greeks invented philosophy, please go just watch / read, listen, whatever that. Like there was philosophy before Greece, and so where in the world did that happen? Around the ancient Near East, around these areas that Alex is mentioning. So like, Alex does have a point here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No. So Peter Adamson, who teaches for the University of Lucerne, which is where you can study a master's program with me. I need to do a plug because all the books I have, because all the books I have sitting next to me are books that I've like contributed to, but they have nothing to do with this topic.
Than is busy doing with his kids, dude. Just plug all. He can't stop.
Plug all. Yeah. So Peter Adamson.
Plug away.
he's published a bunch of different things on this. So like he's got a really good book on Indian philosophy that he co-authored with a Hindu scholar. And so he's like, I mean, he's just trying to like grab at like a lot of different places of going like, look, there's clear philosophy going on all over the world. It's not just like Socrates all of a sudden just came out of nowhere and was like, oh, hang on a second, like, let's do this whole thing. It's just not like that at all. And so I really appreciate Peter Adamson's approach to this, just going, let's really look at everything here. Drew Johnson, he has a book called Hebraic Philosophy. And so there's this forthcoming symposium in Philosophia Christi that I contribute to, where we're looking at this. And what Drew wants to argue is that when you're looking at the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, like it's clear that there's some kind of philosophical reasoning going on there. And then obviously, and a lot of this predates Socrates. And I think there's a case you can make for that beyond what Drew does. So yeah, I don't know. This is a very shallow view of history I think you see going on here in Dinesh's statements.
Which I was, well, Than is back, but I was thinking.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Well, I was going to say, I also, there's a tendency for some people, and it would not surprise me if Dinesh is in this line of like the great Western tradition, like it's just that idea. It's like, oh, everything comes from us type ideal. And, like, so that's, I just hear that in the background. It's like, well, no, like you can't take credit for everything. Like there is this,
Yeah. All right. I got maybe like 10 minutes left. So do we want to keep going through this, or do we want to like,
I mean, it really just is them bickering back and forth, if I remember correctly, after this. And then they get to the Q&A, and I didn't pay attention to the Q&A from the audience because I had had enough.
Fair enough.
You did more debate. You did more prep for this live stream than either me than Than. And also, I think I also had the thought. I think you did more prep for this debate. I wonder if than Dinesh
than either of them.
Yeah, like I think Alex prepped. I don't feel like Dinesh. I don't see the results of Dinesh's prep. I'll say that.
No, because you look at Alex's statement. First off, it's on topic. Second, he's clearly practiced this, so it's the timing. He's got it down to the amount of time he was allotted. And oh my gosh, I don't know how to express this. So many times I'm in an academic setting, and it's painfully obvious to me that most people have not practiced their talk in advance. They've not even thought about like the amount of time it takes. Like the worst case scenario, like I saw, was I was in Greece, and we each had 10 minutes to present like our argument about like theology and personhood. And this woman wrote a 30-page paper that she wanted to try to present in 10 minutes. And I was like, did you even like think about this in advance? Like, it's just so common to not think about these things in advance. So I really appreciate that Alex actually stayed on topic and actually practiced to make sure he was within his time like that he was given. So he prepped.
Yeah. I think, if the rest of the video is literally just the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's just going to be us more complaining some more.
Yeah.
We can call it there. My overall impression of the debate, based off what I've seen so far, is like, if I had to give a winner, Alex is the clear winner. And I Mr. D'Souza, if somehow you come across this video, like I apologize if anything I said or we said hurt your feelings and if we took things too far. But this was a very poor showing for Christianity in general. And Alex, if you're listening, I understand that Exploring Reality is a teeny tiny channel and you got to prioritize the bigger names, but I've reached out to you a few times. I'd love to have a conversation with you privately or publicly, whatever you want. It'd be really cool. So I don't know. Do you guys got anything else to say?
I'm going to be honest. I thought this was going to be worse based on how hard you guys were harping on it. Like, I thought it was going to be one of those. I mean, I don't know if you guys did. I watched the James Torah debate with the Frank guy, Professor Dave. That's what it's called. I thought it was going to be that level of bad when you guys were hyping. I don't know if you guys have seen that debate.
I did not watch that.
You should not. No one, like, it was like max, maybe not maximally bad, really, really bad. And I was expecting like that level when I came into this, and so it's like, oh, like nobody like yelled at the other person, like
that's true.
So
Yeah.
So Than and Ryan are not reliable. They don't have reliable testimony.
I'm just gonna delete my channel.
They over exaggerated things about this debate in order to serve a media content entertainment point, and therefore they're untrustworthy and they should not be listened to. So
all right, I'm ending the stream now.
Thanks for having me on, by the way. Appreciate it.
Ryan, are you guys at Lucerne still taking in master's students?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you've still got a couple months where you can apply. And we also have a bunch of scholarships. We got 2 sets of scholarships, both of which are full rides. So just like the general population, for anybody doesn't matter where you live in the world, we've got scholarships still available. And then if you are Polish, if you're actually in Poland, we have another set of special scholarships just for students who are like Polish citizens. So yeah,
Ryan, isn't that program like really cheap? Like,
it's super cheap.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Exactly.
What are the numbers for that?
It depends on.
I got you.
Yeah, no, this is good. So it depends on the exchange rate, but like if the current exchange rate, if I remember correctly, between Swiss francs and American dollars, you're looking at around like $2,500 a year, because the Swiss government thinks that higher education is important for some crazy reason, and so they're like, hey, let's like kind of like subsidize this. So the program is like quite cheap compared to your average like U.S. Like a graduate program.
And is it all in person, or is there any hybrid, or what about that?
It's all online. We do have in-person stuff that happens. So we've got a summer school, or like kind of like a summer, according to the Swiss, varies a little bit. So sometimes it might go into like September or something, that takes place either in Switzerland or in Sicily. It varies depending on the year. That's all in person. And then there are different opportunities to do like a weekend seminar in person. So I'm going to be doing, in December, I'm doing a weekend seminar just on God and time in Jewish, Christian, and Islamic philosophy. And then in April of 2025, I'm doing God and emotion, just a weekend seminar just on God and emotion. But most of it's online. But yeah, but there's opportunities to do in-person stuff.
That sounds like a sincerely like really fantastic opportunity. If someone's watching this, it wouldn't make sense for me to do it, but like if it made sense for me to do it, like I would like I wish that this was around back when I was home,
for anybody watching it, I so badly want to be a part of this program. Like, if you're exploring master's programs, check it out. Like, if you like my channel, I've learned so much from Ryan's work. I'm pretty much a Ryan parrot.
That's not good, because there's too much like sarcasm and it's a parrot. Like,
I'm a Ryan parrot with a Rasmussen tone most of the time. How about that?
Less entertaining, but still, you get to the point. But yes, I guess I should also say, like, so we've created these new certificates for advanced studies. So like the master's program, like there's certain like a bunch of hoops you have to jump through to get into that. The certificate is different. Certificate program is, say you did your bachelor's in like computer science or anything under the sun. It doesn't matter. Like not in philosophy or theology, or in some cases too, you never finished, you never went to undergrad. We can let some people into the certificate program, and the certificate program, what it does is it lets you take 4 of our master's level courses. So you got 1 semester of study and then another semester of writing a dissertation that like someone like me or one of the other professors will supervise. So if you're just like, I wish I could get deeper into this, but I don't want to do a whole master's degree, or I'm not ready for that, then we've got these different certificates. So you can do a certificate in Christian philosophy, you could do one in Jewish philosophy, or you could do one in Islamic philosophy.
All right. One last thing I'm going to bring up here is go buy this book.
Thank you, Than.
Buy this. if by the end of the summer, James has 200 sales, I will.
I'm ready.
I don't know what I'll do.
Dan doesn't know how many sales I already have, so this is a bold claim for him to be making.
I don't know how many.
It's not at 200.
I know through direct acquaintance. I don't know what I'll do. You guys can decide what I will do if you do that for James. So buy the book; it's good.
Or read it on Kindle Unlimited for free. That's fine too.
That will do. But look, like if you want to know what it feels like to have a surge testosterone while you're surfing on a nuclear rocket and laughing at your enemies as their faces get burned off, you need to read this book.
Dude, you should have put that in your review.
Yeah, that is an amazing blurb for a book.
Yeah, that's I actually made. I'm gonna consider quoting you and putting that at the top of my little section there.
Yeah, because I've got some books coming out like hopefully this year, and I want a blurb like that on the book.
Oh,
like,
I can do that. I can do that
Okay.
for you, Ryan.
There
I
we
already
go.
I already for your little book about a big god. I got a good one already cooking up in my head.
Good. Okay, that's what I want.
Stan, I did
All
think this is tangentially related. I did think, and I'm going to say this before we cut off because I want the audience to maybe peer pressure you into this. I did think while we
Peer
were
pressure
doing
me
this,
into this.
Mhm.
Okay.
I did think while we were doing this that because there was so much frustration in us watching this, that this could be done in like a gym environment, and every time you get angry, you just have to like there's like a deadlift platform behind you, and you're just like and you're just like deadlifting. I think that something along those lines should be considered.
I would feel so like not cool filming in the gym like that.
Oh,
Bro,
okay,
you
don't wanna be one of
literally
those
posted a
influencers.
TikTok video today of you working out in the gym.
Here's
What
the
are you
difference.
talking
Here's the
about?
difference. No. There's a relevant difference.
My brother in Christ, what are you talking about?
There's a relevant difference between like a 15-second clip of me doing one lift and me just, hey, what's up, guys?
So anyways, ancient Near Eastern cosmology, 1 second, we do some deadlifts. That's all I had to say.
I'll consider it if you get 200 sales.
Okay, bet.
All right, guys. I'm gonna end the stream. I'm gonna go hang out with my wife and kids. It's Friday. Thanks for joining me, James and Ryan. Until
Remember
next
to
time,
give
everybody.
Fan money. Fan plugged us. We have to plug Fan. Give Fan money. Support his channel.
Oh, I guess
Stuff like that.
I guess I should say something on that actually before I finish that. I always forget about myself.
I got you.
For those that you don't know, I teach. That's like my other job with this. My contract though is coming up at the end of this month, meaning I'm gonna have a big source of income that's gone. I'm looking at other work, but at the same time, I'm also just wondering if I can't raise enough in like Patreon support and all that other stuff to be able just to mitigate for that loss and be able to actually give like 40, probably more, like 50 hours a week to this instead of the 20 hours a week that I give to this, because I can't work a teaching job and this both full time at the same time. So yeah, if you guys, I mean, I'm kind of at this point right now where I'm not trying to like be manipulative or anything like that, but I'm at a point right now where it's kind of like, well, I can live out a few months and try to raise enough support to do this full time without trying to find that other job. If you find a lot of value in the work that I do, just consider being a supporter. Any amount helps, not hurts. Anywhere from $1 to whatever you can and want to give. Everything's appreciated. And you get some cool perks if you do that too, which more of those will come. So that's the end of that. I don't like asking for money. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I hope this was helpful. Let me know in the comments if you guys have questions or if this inspired the desire to see a video on this particular topic as well. Until next time, God bless.